Good afternoon. Call the Health Department Board of Health meeting to order. I believe it's 4:30. Jennifer, you ready to go? Okay,
Roloff,
Present.
Hinkin,
present.
McGinnis,
Present.
Kuhn,
Present.
Valerito,
Here.
Howard,
Here.
Rubin,
Here.
Marcus.
Here. Item number 3 is review and approval of the meeting minutes from February 1st, 2022. I have a motion to approve,
I'll make that motion.
moved by Commissioner Roloff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Valerito. Jennifer, can we have a voice vote, please?
Rubin,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hinkin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Review and approval of the special meeting minutes from February 14th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Moved by
Support.
Commissioner Marcus, supported by Commissioner Rubin. We have a voice vote, please.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Rubin,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hinkin.
Yes. All right. Review and approval of the agenda for this evening.
Scott, before we do a motion, I want to ask for clarification as to who Mary Moore is, what her qualifications are, what allowed her to become an agenda item. I see no handout. I'm not clear why exactly she gets more than 3 minutes.
She is on the agenda at Commissioner Rubin's request. Jairus, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, if you'd like. I mean, she has an introduction and an answer to your question. So I guess
Is there an action item associated with her presentation?
it's informational.
How does she jump the line?
Jump the line.
Well, we have a public comment period. It's 3 minutes. Why does she get more than, what did she do that qualifies her to get more than 3 minutes?
What did Mr. Dixon do to get more than 3 minutes?
I am glad you asked that question, because when I saw that Mary Moore was on the agenda last time and you started to explain, except she wasn't going to be here, I thought, I wonder what the process is by which somebody gets to jump the line and be on the agenda. So I copied her presentation topic from last time and submitted it for this time, thinking, let's see how it works. The answer is there doesn't appear to be a process. It's just, hey, ask a member of the Board of Health, I want to jump the line and talk for a while, and I get to do it. So Dixon's here. He was kind enough to agree, but he's just as qualified as Mary Moore, which is to say both of them should get 3 minutes. Think about that.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
A motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? And by way of discussion, prior to approval of this agenda, I've already spoken with both Commissioners McGinnis and Rubin. If we do go forward with these presentations from Mary Moore and Dixon, I'm going to mess up your last name. Is it Dutterar?
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you in person, by the way. Okay. I would like to put a 10-minute time limit on each of those presentations if they are included in this evening's agenda. I think we're going to have just a few folks that want to address us, and our maintenance guy really doesn't want us to be here until 11 o'clock tonight, although we will be, if that's necessary. So I would, a way of expediency, I'd like to put a 10-minute limit on each of those presentations.
Dr. Dixon, he thought that was just
Okay,
fine.
Mr. Koontz, you have,
Yeah,
thought.
so if we proceed with this, are we then saying that time we want to get something on the agenda, we just put it out there and it gets on? That's kind of a precedent that we're setting here, right? So that's just to be clear how we set our agenda. I'd like to make sure we're clear on that.
I think it falls to the chair to approve the agenda. This being my official third meeting,
Mhm.
I'm kind of learning that along the
Right.
way, to be very honest. And because Commissioner Rubing had requested Ms. Moore to make the presentation some time ago, and we've not been able to include her as part of the agenda, I did approve it on this agenda. And I assumed that Commissioner McGinnis was going to have someone who was, I don't know if it's a rebuttal or however you want to say it, but I wanted to give both members the opportunity to present their side. So if it is the will of the board that we not have them be part of this agenda, we can have that vote. Now, we did have a motion. I don't recall if we had a second. Jennifer, did we have a second?
Yeah, Howard.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
If we do move forward with this agenda, I just want the board to know that I intend to request some presentations in the coming meetings, and I'll expect them to make it on the agenda.
Understood. They would be subject to the same approval of agenda as these two are. Any further discussion? So the motion is to approve the agenda as presented. It's been moved and seconded. Jennifer, can we have a voice vote, please?
Roloff? Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McGinnis,
No,
Kuntz,
Yes,
Pallarito,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
You already
You just
Or did you? I'm sorry.
Well, you woke me up.
Well, we're
anyway.
in her building, so we kind of have to give Shirley one vote.
She gets 2 votes. We're in her building.
By the way, everyone, welcome to the Shirley Roll-Off Center. If you haven't been here before, she built this just for you all. Okay. So the agenda has been approved. We move now to public comment. Prior to public comment, thank you. I do have a list of people who would like to address the Board of Health. Prior to doing so, I'm going to read you a list of rules. The availability of public comment is recognized by Robert's Rules of Order and the Michigan Open Meetings Act to provide for orderly comment from the public. To that end, the following information is provided. There will be a sign-up sheet for those who wish to speak during public comment. A person who wishes to speak during public comment will first obtain recognition by the chairperson before speaking. The person will stand at the podium so that the microphone located there will be able to amplify the person's voice. I think we are set up. The podium is right in the middle of the crowd here. The person addresses the chairperson on behalf of the entire board. Public comment is not to be addressed to individual commissioners or staff. The person will first state their first and last name with spelling of the name if necessary. There's a 3-minute time limit for each speaker. There will be someone keeping time. After you state your name and spelling, they will start the timer. Once you hear the ding, please be respectful and end your comment. A speaker may speak only once at public comment. There is no provision for another audience member to donate their 3-minute time to a speaker. A speaker will be out of order if the speaker disrupts the meeting fails to be germane, by speaking longer than the allotted time, by speaking vulgarities, or by making a personal attack on a board member or health department employee that is unrelated to the performance of that person's duties. I'm going to take a side note here. I just heard a phone ring. I'm going to ask everybody to please put your phones on vibrate. Just check them to make sure that we don't have any interruption that way, please. If a speaker is called out of order, that speaker will not be able to speak again at the same meeting. If the speaker continues to disrupt the meeting or is disorderly, the chairperson may request the removal of the speaker by law enforcement. Members of the public shall refrain from interrupting the designated speaker. The chairperson may interrupt the speaker at any time to enforce the rules. Members of the public are not to approach the board members or distribute any materials during the meeting. Members of the public shall not engage in disruptive, discourteous, belligerent, impertinent, threatening, disparaging, or otherwise uncivil behavior. Members of the public who refuse to conform with the rules despite being cautioned to do so by the chair may be asked to leave the meeting and/or will result in a suspension of proceedings and adjournment. The chairperson will have the discretion to permit members of the public to speak at times other than the times reserved for public comment. So with all that in mind, I have a list of people who have signed up to speak. At the end of this list, I will ask if there is any further public comment. You'll be subjected to the same rules and you'll be asked to approach the podium, give us your name, and move forward with your public comment. Commissioner Pallarito, have you got your timer handy?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. Commissioner Pallarito is going to say 30 seconds when you have 30 seconds left, and then he will say 3 minutes. With that, we'll invite Pat Pralik to the podium.
Hi, my name is Pat Pralik and I'm a resident of Emmett County. You all set? Okay. The business of running a health department is very different from running a private business. A private business, the ultimate goal is increasing profits. The goal of the health department is to prevent serious disease and improve the quality of life, done by utilizing local appropriations and securing grants. Salaries don't change when grants are secured. In fact, adding new programs means extra work for the entire agency. Hiring staff, working with finance to track expenditures, working with IT to track services, and the list goes on. Yet, everyone working at the health department believes in the culture of working to prevent disease and serious illness. So what does that mean? It means having a nurse practitioner in a school-based health clinic who identifies a serious heart condition in a teen wanting to play sports and working with U of M to get that teen scheduled for life-saving surgery. It means the trust a woman who is 6 months pregnant, whose husband had beaten her abdomen and other body parts with a belt, has when she moves a dresser that was in front of the door to keep her husband out, to let the nurse in, to share options with her to keep her and her unborn baby safe. It means having a nurse to make home visits to a single mom whose baby is crying all night, and the mom being able to trust the nurse when she has the courage to say that she wanted to shake her baby to make him stop crying because she was exhausted. And the nurse working with that mom to create a safety plan. It means having a nurse practitioner identify a lump in a woman's breast, a woman who had delayed getting her lump evaluated for months because she didn't have the money and thought it was easier to live with the slight hope that she didn't have cancer rather than to live her life knowing she was dying and unable to afford treatment. And having the nurse practitioner explain that we could enroll her in a special Medicaid program for women to treat her breast cancer. The past months have been a traumatic time for health department employees. I am thankful to the board members who have supported the health department and its leadership because it takes an entire agency to provide essential services. To those board members who have been critical of the health department's leadership, when you hear of a teenager who dies on a sports field, a woman killed or seriously injured from domestic violence, a baby killed or seriously injured from child abuse, or a friend whose life is entered
30 seconds.
who's ended too soon because of breast cancer, think about your actions and how your decisions contributed to those tragedies. Because when you threaten health department funding and leadership, that's the impact your actions can have. As new board members, the best course of action at this time is to have the directors report orally at the board meeting each month, so you can learn about health department services prior to making any funding decisions. Thank you.
Mary Martin check.
They're not clapping for me. My name is Mary Martinchuk, and I'm a resident of Emmett County, and I'm a retired public health nurse. My comments today are reflective of number 7 and number 9 on the agenda. Number 7, Lisa Peacock's resignation. I am quite sure that almost 150 employees join me in deep appreciation for the leadership and guidance Lisa has shown over the past 12 years, most notably in the past 2 years. Lisa and these employees demonstrate caring and compassion with respect for the worth of all people, especially the vulnerable. I am hoping that some of you have increased your knowledge of public health services to communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Someday, those critical of health department leadership and staff will appreciate the employees and leadership who provided essential services to community members during the past 2 years and continue to do so. Many of you have and will continue to use the services despite being critical of those services. I am still trying to understand the rudeness and vindictiveness of many. Regarding agenda item number 9, I have attended several Board of Health meetings over the past few months and have been so disappointed in the lack of comment, discussion, and questions regarding each of the director reports. I appreciate the time and effort each director has taken to provide you with program information. Over the past few months, I have heard little interest in the day-to-day services provided by the Health Department of Northwest Michigan staff. As a matter of fact, I rarely see a director at a board meeting. Your choice, their choice, I don't know, but it seems to me that if the directors were at Board of Health meetings, you could get verbal responses to several of your questions, and you could be educated in public health activities. It's a great opportunity to ask questions and educate you and the public. You have the opportunity to get to know the strong leadership team and who work closely with staff. The Board of Health interest in health department services would expand your knowledge of health department activities so that you can share your knowledge with your constituents.
30 seconds.
I hope you are willing to start listening and asking program questions of these leaders. A strong Board of Health and leadership team have worked for over 90 years, and I, for one, would like to see that continue. Thank you.
Sue VanDeventer.
Thank you. I'm Sue VanDeventer from Emmett County. First of all, I want to thank Lisa Peacock and her team for their diligence and commitment to protecting the health of the residents of Northern Michigan during a deadly pandemic. You kept us informed, you kept us safe, and you undoubtedly saved lives, all in the face of incredible challenges. I'm so sorry to see you go, but I applaud your hard work and leadership and wish you the best in your next position. Wherever that is, they will be lucky to have you. I also want to express my thanks to those of you on the board who have been so supportive of Lisa through these difficult months. I also want to express my anger and frustration at this entire uproar. It is inconceivable to me that a capable, hardworking, and intelligent woman with several professional credentials who has followed the highest level of medical expertise in doing the job she was hired to do would be treated with such contempt and disrespect by some members of this board. Not only in the way she was directly treated, but also by allowing such disrespect and vitriol as she was subjected to by a small but loud minority, all over an issue that was temporary and is now moot. I wonder how you would feel if it were your spouse, your wife, or your daughter who is being subjected to this ugliness. The author, Kate Mann, who writes on male privilege and entitlement, gives one example of this phenomenon as a woman who is not being granted her rightful authority to speak about subjects in which she is an expert. And to that example, I would add, and by trying to put her in her place for doing so, because that was certainly what happened here. Lisa is the expert, and yet you were trying to tell her how to do her job. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mary Lieberman.
First, I'd like to recognize the difficult challenges and work faced by the board, the health board. I particularly want to thank my representatives from Emmett County who have persevered and showed great strength and courage during a tumultuous time, truly representing the majority of their constituents. I also want to express appreciation to the Health Department of Northwest Michigan staff under the tremendous leadership of Dr. Josh Meyerson and Ms. Lisa Peacock. Their strength and courage and wisdom in guiding our families, friends, and communities is to be commended, never ridiculed or belittled. I'm appalled to hear about the disrespect shown toward them. They and their families have suffered horrendous persecution during this pandemic. What a sad commentary that we have residents who defy science and take sadistic pride in inflicting pain on those whose only fault is simply doing their job to protect us. The pandemic has certainly been a horrific time for all of us, filled with so many unknowns, including great sadness, families who have faced illness and death. Yet this staff and the employees of the Health Department of Northwest Michigan under Dr. Meyerson and Ms. Peacock never wavered or abandoned the ship. They did everything humanly possible to protect us from COVID and sometimes ourselves. While a small group have persisted in their defiance of mask mandates, this group of people truly, the health department people, have truly been relentless and staying strong in protecting us, regardless of the stones that were thrown their way. While some people appear to take joy in the pain they've inflicted on Ms. Peacock and her family, be aware that in doing so, you've also brutalized this entire health department of Northwest Michigan staff. Those same employees have not been supported and respected. They continued to do their jobs regardless, and so much more during the pandemic. They wholeheartedly support Dr. Meyerson and Ms. Peacock and are simply devastated by the announcement that Ms. Peacock has a pending resignation. Some people
30
are
seconds.
pleased, sadly, that she's leaving. I assure you that her staff is not. Look around the room and hallway today. You'll see both residents and employees wearing "I am Lisa" name tags. Her legacy will live on in these people. They will make sure to carry on the integrity of public health. Public health is bigger than any one person. Ms. Peacock, I admire, respect, and applaud you. Your presence here today is symbolic of your integrity as a leader.
Time is up.
Okay.
Kirsten, forgive me, it's Kirsten Harbin.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirsten Harbin, and I'm an Emmett County resident. I want to take a moment to thank those commissioners who have shown support for Lisa Peacock and the health department as a whole. Your support and professionalism make me very proud to be represented by you. This board is charged with supporting the health officer, medical director, and the health department staff. It has become abundantly clear by the lack of decorum, cutting comments, and overall actions that there is little, if any, respect for the health department of Northwest Michigan. 2 years ago, the Board of Health and Communities, the health department of Northwest Michigan serve, were asking for help. Guided by the incredible leadership of Ms. Peacock and Dr. Meyerson, the entire staff stepped up and worked tirelessly, often on weekends, late into the night and again early in the morning to provide answers, be a listening ear, and help community members figure out the next steps in a very scary, lethal situation. It is shameful that this board has allowed and even at times perpetuated the harassment and humiliation of Ms. Peacock. With her resignation, we are losing a strong, positive, and fearless leader who has helped expand services the health department can offer to the community members, including those in rural areas and the elderly. I encourage you to visit HDNW's website to learn about the incredible services our health department provides to Antrim, Charlevoix, Emmett, and Otsego County residents, as it is clear that you lack a grasp of the health department's mission and the actions and programs it implements to carry these out. It is my hope that this Board of Health considers what their roles are and how they can best help keep our communities safe and healthy. Commissioners are appointed to this board because you are elected officials of this community. You were elected because of the majority of your constituents believed that you would use your experiences through which you gained expertise in your fields and insights into what communities' needs are and wisdom gained from those experiences to represent their interest. It is both baffling and wildly disappointing that the collective years of experience in your fields has led you to believe that you are an expert in all fields, including public health, rather than recognize the expertise of others. Surely, time and resources that have been put towards voting to rescind a mask order issued by a health officer who's well-educated in public health, a nurse practitioner, and has been working in public health for years could have been better spent. Thank you.
Karen Denveston.
Hi, my name is Karen Denveston. I'm a resident of Emmett County. Actually, my name is Dr. Karen Denveston. I have been a resident of Emmett County for the past 14 years. I'm an infectious disease physician and the chairman of infection prevention at McLaren Northern Michigan Hospital in Petoskey, Michigan. I've been on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic for the past 2 years, and I've guided our hospital and community through every aspect of COVID-19, from patient care to prevention and policies. I've experienced firsthand the incredible devastation, suffering, and death caused by this virus. For the most part, the most serious effects of the COVID pandemic have happened behind closed hospital doors, where almost 1 million people in the United States alone have died of COVID, and millions more have battled severe illness. I wish you could see what I have seen to truly understand what the frontline workers, patients, and their families have gone through for the past 2 years. We're exhausted, we're emotionally spent, we're morally broken, and we feel unsupported by the community that we've shown up every day to serve, to protect, and to heal. So many health workers can't do this anymore and have left the profession, further straining resources. Despite thousands of COVID cases in Emmett County, scores of COVID deaths in our local hospital alone, our community has fared better than most due to the strong leadership and mitigation measures set forth by the Department of Health of Northwest Michigan. Decisions have been based on the best current science and data to protect the health and well-being of our community. The Health Department of Northwest Michigan has almost a century-long tradition of excellence in promoting health and wellness in our 4-county area. The Health Department has been a shining example of service, innovation, and protection for our community. We are fortunate to have such a strong, capable, and committed health department. It is truly one of the reasons why I choose to call Northwest Michigan home. COVID-19 has been a public health crisis that has challenged us all in very different ways. I understand that, but this is not a partisan issue. COVID kills indiscriminately. We should all be able to agree that we need to protect and provide a healthy community for all residents of Northwest Michigan. I'm alarmed and concerned that there has been an organized effort over the past 6 months to discredit, dismantle, and destroy leadership at the Department of Public Health. Commissioners, this will be your legacy, dismantling a well-respected, highly functional health department that has served our community for almost 100 years. This leadership
30 seconds.
can't simply be replaced. Highly qualified, trained, experienced physicians and nurses are in short supply. Nobody wants to work where they're not supported. Now is the time to come together and set our differences and opinions aside and continue to serve the most vulnerable in our community. Nothing can be achieved by continuing a campaign of vindictiveness. We love our jobs and we want to continue to serve our community. And I urge you to come together to achieve this end.
Tracy Skinner.
Yeah, I didn't know that she was going to be a ringer. My name is Tracy Skinner, TracySkinner. And what a struggle. I have listened to the Board of Health meetings from September through now in preparation for speaking to you today. This struggle has been seen across our country as skilled health professionals have had enough and are laying aside their careers and their expertise after the anger that's been focused like a laser beam on our leadership. It's hard to imagine how advancement to a leadership position, especially in this climate, would be good for anyone's mental or physical health. It's also hard to imagine how serving on the Board of Health during this time would be good for anyone's mental or physical health. I'm a mental health professional, just shy of 29 years of experience, and I've worked closely as a contract employee with the health department almost that entire time. In 2019, when I became an employee in the Family Health Division, I was required to complete several lengthy, complicated modules of FEMA training that my coworkers have also completed. I joked at that time that there weren't many hurricanes that hit northern Michigan. I had no idea that in just a few short months, I would see that command structure brought to life before my eyes as my coworkers and I were shifted into vastly different roles in an ever-changing landscape of a pandemic. We were not perfect, but I do have to say that I am ferociously proud of how well we did. I could look at an organizational chart of the health department and tell you that every single person on that chart played a part in this response, and it was a privilege to watch it come together. We did clinics 7 days a week and evenings. Top down, it was pretty mind-boggling, and it didn't happen by accident. It happened because of the planning of our leadership team under the direction of Lisa Peacock. I assisted with registration and check-in during these mass vaccination clinics in every one of your counties, many days in this building. I listened to the men laugh about the question about being pregnant on the form. Gee, I had an ultrasound this morning. You think the doctor would have mentioned something if I was pregnant? I loved those people, and I needed the laugh because the world was full of anger and frustration. Even though the months have passed, this board seemed to be stuck at a Friday just before school started. I'm saddened that with all the wisdom and the struggle, that this group could not find a way to move past that. I know communication is complicated. I joke that if it was easy, everybody would do it. I emailed a TED Talk about this to the board members yesterday by a Harvard professor about the role of dignity in conflict resolution. I appreciate that amidst all that's going on, that Mr. Marcus took the time to watch and responded last night. That was an unexpected gift of time. Thank you. It's hard to listen and stay present at finding a path when things break down. It takes a great deal more effort to find connections when someone has looked at life through a different lens. It is a huge loss that our health officer is resigning. Our agency has benefited from her leadership through two of the most challenging years in this health department's history. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ian Murphy.
My name is Ian Murphy, resident of Otsego County. I'll be really brief. Thank you for the 3 minutes tonight. I own a little restaurant over in Gaylord called the Iron Pig Smokehouse. I'm here tonight to give you guys another quick update, as quick as I can in 3 minutes. Recently, there was a brief filed from what they call an amicus brief. It was filed by attorneys for the Michigan Senate and the Michigan House of Representatives. And what they are saying, and I'm just going to read the introduction because they say it much better than I do. I know that Ms. Moore may have something to say about this later. Thank you for putting them on the agenda and the other gentleman as well. I'm very, very curious to see what he has to say. Here is what the attorneys are saying to this Michigan Supreme Court. The court should deny the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services extraordinary application for bypass review, where for the first time in this entire case, the department directly challenges and asks the court to abrogate in its recent decision in recertified questions from 2022. The department's bypass application should be denied for 3 reasons. One, granting the department's bypass application here should be would be extremely unorthodox when no circumstances warrant diverging from MCR 7.305C2 standard review procedure, and accepting a review would shortcut necessary and potentially dispositive intermediate appellate review. 2, the department has not preserved the issue of whether in recertified questions should be overruled. And 3, the court risks institutional harm by overruling itself less than 2 years after deciding in recertified questions. Now, it sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but it's important. What's important here, you guys, is that the legislative branch of the government is now coming in and advising the judicial branch of the government against what the executive branch has done for the second time, which is used a law now found unconstitutional. A lot of the upset and anger that has happened in this meeting, as well as many other Board of Health around the state. I know this because our attorney is involved in many of these cases, and is involved in the case litigating against you folks right now. Don't be, you're not going to, some of you might not be happy with this, but don't be mad at Ms. Peacock. She's following an unconstitutional law. Okay? Now, we can talk about harassment, and we probably have a lot of things in common when it comes to being harassed and things coming out on social media and your name being in the news and people taking your picture.
Sir, sir, I would ask that you direct your comments to the chair.
You got it. But my point should be pretty clear. She's not necessarily to blame. What needs to happen here moving forward, whether or not you accept her resignation, this board needs to look inward at its processes moving forward. Thank you.
Frank Hawthorne.
Frank Hawthorne, Hawthorne, resident of Emmett County. As longtime year-round residents of Emmett County of Petoskey, my wife and I wish to register our disappointment in how some members of the Northwest Michigan Board of Health have allowed extreme persons from our region, that being those who've hyper-politicized public response to the COVID-19 pandemic, to disrupt actions of both the board and the HDNM allied health professionals who serve us well. We're particularly upset to learn of punitive budget cut proposals and of the recent resignation of Chief Health Officer Lisa Peacock. Thank you, Lisa, for all your service. All of which begs the question, who of sound mind will wish to succeed her in this position and thereby make themselves the target of similar vitriolic attacks in the future? Therefore, please do better going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Dutterer, you're on the list. Are you okay with waiting until your presentation time, sir? Thank you. Nancy Ferguson.
Hello, I'm Nancy Ferguson from Charlevoix County. I've been a commissioner there for 6 years before I was voted out. And I have sat where you are sitting for 6 years. I sat there and I look at the decisions that were made during the time that I was there, and I'm proud of them. This is an award-winning health department. They are looked up to by all around the state. What I understand is that some of you that are new to this have come here with an agenda. And your agenda is to disrupt and dismantle this health department. And over what? A 5x9 piece of fabric? Give me a break. I just don't get it. And for this, you have stopped negotiating over your differences as you come here and trying to work together. I look at the experience that you bring in guiding to the health department. And I don't know all of your jobs, but I know that we have a police officer, an ex-police, a teacher, a farmer. And I don't know if any of you have healthcare experience, but you learn a lot when you're on this. I know I sure did. And what we have here is we have two people with a load of experience, one from Otsego and one from Charlevoix, and everybody else who has almost no experience. Even the ones that have been here for a year and 2 months, if you take that in real time, it comes out to somewhere between a week and a month of job experience. And that's enough to make the decisions you're trying to make here. I do not believe that. I cannot believe that you have the audacity to think that you can run or supervise this multi-county health department. I simply don't believe it. I want you to think carefully before you cast your vote tonight, but the smartest thing that you could do tonight is to not accept the resignation of Chief Health Officer Lisa Peacock. And I hope that you will come to that decision. Thank you for your time.
Jen Thompson.
My name is Jennifer Thompson from Otsego County. I'm going to read this fast because I only have 3 minutes. I'd like to address the board tonight regarding a stateside podcast that I recently heard, and I feel it's important to mention a few things before we get started. I've had the blessed and awesome opportunity to be in the caretaker role as a mother for over 18 years, and my experience ranges in managing, serving, caring for, feeding, supporting, taxi driving, fixing, developing my children. The list goes on and on. So many things that they have done have fed me mentally and emotionally as their mother. As a woman of faith also, I ask God, why did he choose me to be their mother? Because I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes along the way, but being an adult, educated, and part of the minority woman, I also know that mistakes doesn't mean failure. It means you learn and then you move on in correction. Whatever reason the Lord chose these children onto me as alone on this side of heaven for the time being, I'll never know. But with that being said, he gave me a massive responsibility to grow them with integrity and character, to know the difference between right and wrong, and more than ever in these past 2 years, the true definition of tyranny. After all the successes and a few failures along the way, I do not regret 1 minute. I say all of this because as a mother of over 18 years of experience, it makes me the perfect candidate to know what's in the best interest, not the government, not the school, not any public or private or governmental entity, not a health department, me. I have to watch out for the safety and welfare of my children. Since this pandemic, you do not get to be the martyr. My children, along with thousands of others, have had to also suffer external, physical, and internal consequences as well, all by one person's actions and decisions. Nobody asked me, consulted with me, discussed with me what was in the best interest of my child. And when those freedoms are taken away, it is not out of fear that the public or myself step up and demand recourse, but out of knowing and understanding the Constitution of the United States of America for we the people. It was stated in the podcast that you can learn to move on, and it's okay that our liberties are being threatened, but I cannot. It's not okay. You speak about the lack of support from your employer, and I have to ask, what are the support of our children and our families from the school system? When the police can be brought into the schools to threaten and use fear and coercion to a group of 9th through 12th graders who are peacefully standing up to tyranny and then threaten them to leave or be suspended, actually being suspended, threatening the losses of sporting events when the previous year was stripped of all those events, it's not okay. And it's taught this generation of students to distrust the school system, teachers, administrators, coaches, and paraprofessionals. What a pitiful shame. This is not okay. Don't talk to me about fear or harassment or being threatened. You're not special or exempt. Your position is not exempt from termination. You do not get to dictate without consequences for your action. As a mother, that's what I teach my children, and a lesson they continue to learn. Your crimes against humanity have brought this to the place of the consequences that you now face. And I speak for the general population saying good riddance and goodbye.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. These comments should be directed towards the chair, please. Could you enforce that?
Brenda Caldwell. Forgive me if I've mispronounced that. Brenda. Caldwell, thank you.
My name is Brenda Caldwell. I'm from Emmett County. Health Officer Lisa Peacock recently tendered her letter of resignation. Several times in her letter, she referred disparagingly to the political nature of the Board of Health. Either she is naive or intentionally deflecting blame onto this board. She asserts that COVID restrictions and the money surrounding it are apolitical. County commissioners are elected officials. By definition, that is a political position. The board members are merely representing their constituents. Majority rules. We have spoken. We citizens want the health department in all its forms to stay out of our lives. We will come to you when we need you. That's how it should be. That's how it's always been. Also in her letter, the health officer refers to the loss of her leadership team who resigned as grave and unfortunate casualties of the reckless political agendas of some Board of Health members. We parents believe the loss of our personal autonomy is a grave and unfortunate casualty. It is a direct result of her bureaucracy's intrusion into our lives. We are losing our sacred rights. Under her leadership, we lost the right to make medical decisions for ourselves and our own children. The grave and unfortunate casualties are those who have and will suffer very real side effects of lockdowns, forced masks, and COVID injections. Is COVID political? Of course it is. Biden's advisors told him to back off on COVID restrictions and ease mask guidance if his party wishes to win in November. Is that why our soon-to-be former health officer rescinded her mask order 2 weeks ago? Was it really ever about COVID? Or was it about power? You can laugh, that's fine with me, I don't care. Congress just lifted their own mask mandate. Why is that? Ask yourself. Is it because wearing masks wouldn't look good politically at the State of the Union address tonight? By its own admission, the CDC has stated they have withheld data on the side effects of lockdowns, masks, and vaccines. They fear the data would be, quote, misunderstood, unquote.
30
Make no mistake,
seconds.
we understand exactly why the CDC is withholding that data. We won't like what they have to say. We won't like it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we only have a few more people who are listed here to speak. Please do not direct your attention, your visual attention to anyone other than the chair or the board. Terry Tallis.
My name is Terry Tallis, and I'm from Emmett County. I'm the former CFO and Administrative Officer of the Health Department of Northwest Michigan until my retirement last month. Having been in this position, I've had the opportunity to see this board at work. And since last year, when the new board members, Jairus Rubing, Rob Pallarito, and Scott Hankins, and Dave Batchelor, who has since resigned, were seated. From the first meeting, it was clear to me that you demonstrated very little interest in the workings of the health department and its finances, which is one of your primary responsibilities as board members. I sat through meetings where the great and expansive work of this agency was presented with very little interest paid to these presentations by way of follow-up questions or discussion. I myself presented information on revenue aspects of the business in an attempt to broaden your understanding of how the health department operations were very different from what you experience at the county. Again, with very little interest, discussion, or questions following my presentation. You explicitly told the health officer, Lisa, that you wanted shorter meetings without presentations because you could read the information in the monthly packet. It's been my experience through 40 years of, sorry. So great to have technology, right? Sorry. through 40 years of experience in my career, that spoken presentations often provide more information than a written one provides, as long as the PowerPoint isn't being read word for word, which is not the case with our director report. It amazed me that you showed so little interest in the programs and the operations of the agency. One might wonder what your interest in being on the Board of Health really was. Then came the mask mandate, and that was the showstopper, with an angry mob attending the September meeting, which we endured 7 hours of people yelling at us and gesturing at us. The revised budget for the 2021 year and the initial budget for the 2022 year, totaling approximately $50 million in total, got less than 5 minutes of your attention at that meeting, and not a single question was asked, even though that is your primary responsibility, one of them. Members of this board have let the mask mandate issue in late August become the one and only thing that captures your attention.
30
even in
seconds.
the light of far more numerous and less noisy responses via comment cards that were received showing great support for the mandate. It appears that you're only interested in serving those constituents that are the loudest. As a result, we're about to lose, the health department will lose a consummate professional. Lisa Peacock is highly educated, award-winning, and an innovative leader. We have a great team of professionals, and we couldn't do it without this leader leading this group. I would have to just say that it looks like to me that you have blinders on your eyes.
Time is up, ma'am.
Shame on you for letting this happen.
Jenny T. She's not speaking now. Okay. That's the last person I have on the list. Does anyone else from the public want to address the board? Please come forward to the podium, ma'am. State your name. Well, under the rules of this meeting, ma'am.
Well, my name is Amy. That's all you're going to get. I'm here to inform you and to tell you, and especially one of the board members, that I'm thankful that you've stood on the side of the Constitution. I'm not in agreement with how Lisa's handled her mask mandate, and I find it laughable that she would go into a guest opinion in a paper speaking about valuing freedoms when she's valued nobody's, and when she's done nothing but quench people's freedoms, such as the Fourth Amendment, and especially the First Amendment with regards to me, who, because she did not like a survey I created, decided to send the Michigan State Police to my home to threaten and intimidate me in October. She talks about trauma, the trauma that she has suffered from people, but she has viewed none of the trauma that she has inflicted on other people, mainly children. And tonight, when you look at her resignation, I hope you accept it. And I also hope that you negotiate with her to be out of office before the April 29th deadline. Thank you.
I would like to say something as well.
Sarah Storm, Charlevoix County. I just want to talk on behalf of the kids like I always have since I've started talking in these meetings. And I just want to say to the board, thank you for listening. And my kids want to say thank you for finally deciding to unmask. And I just want it to be known, out of all the students at East Jordan, there's maybe 5 students that are still wearing masks. So it just goes to show what parents wanted all along. Thank you.
Melissa Hahn, Emmett County, and I'm speaking also as a parent that has 2 children, and I thank for the mask mandate. My kids are no longer wearing masks because we have had the opportunity to make them safe. We have looked at the data and they are safe. But the reason that I want to talk to you today is because I have been a public health nurse for 11 years. So the majority of that had nothing to do with COVID. But I want to tell you what it did have to do with. What we do every single day and what we had to do during COVID, while also doing all of this. While we worked weekends, nights, all of that, because we still had to do all the rest of the things that the health department is required to do. We are required to help moms and families. I have been into multiple homes where the mom says to me, I don't know what I'm going to do with this baby. And maybe that's not a place that you've ever been, but it's scary. And to have someone that's able, I am begging you to think about that funding. We will continue to do the things that we have done for 90 years. We will continue to support those that want our support. There is not a program that I work in normally that someone hasn't come to me and asked for that help. For the WIC mom that is struggling to feed, needs someone to support them in breastfeeding. And I am just begging people to know what we do normally. I have enjoyed my job so much because I know how much it's necessary. I know how much those people need our help. And I am begging you to look at that funding and to look at the things that we do and have done well for 90 years. Thank you.
Hi, I wasn't planning on speaking. My name's Chloe Capaldi and I'm from Charlevoix County. And it's very interesting. I was at the Benzie-Leelanau Health Department before I came to this health department earlier or later in 2021. And in 2019, as the emergency preparedness coordinator, we were at our annual health staff meeting and we were doing our strategic planning. And one of the things that was on our strategic plan was to be more visible in the public eye. You know, public health is the thing that's invisible. And when I was first hired at the health department, everyone was like, great, what does the health department do? And, you know, I had a very limited scope at first. I didn't really know. But, you know, 2019, we were ready to like put the word out there and educate the public on all the amazing things that the health department does do. That's very much in the background. And a few months later, here comes COVID, okay? And it's really, really unfortunate because we're in the public eye now. Everyone knows what a health department is, but they don't really know what a health department does. And it is really, really unfortunate because we are now branded as the COVID police, but the health department has been around long before COVID and will be around long after COVID is over. And I think that it's very sad that in the last 2 years, a lot of the choices and a lot of the vitriol around this has been extremely short-sighted, including, you know, the actions that have led to Ms. Peacock's resignation. And I just wanted to express those sentiments.
My name is Lindsay Beauvais. I'm a resident of Charlevoix County. I've also had the pleasure of working for this amazing health department for 6 years. Throughout the COVID pandemic, I've led an amazing team through over 21,000 positive COVID case investigations. I poured my blood, sweat, and many, many tears into protecting my community, your communities. But do you know what? I would do it all again because we are public health. For every single angry call, there were 5 more calls of people truly thankful for our knowledge, our compassion, our expertise. The angry may be louder, but there are far more people supporting the work of the health department. Our job in public health is to protect the whole community, not one individual person or child. I've worked closely with each superintendent who is thankful for our guidance and direction, our work to protect the students and teachers. I'm also a parent, and you know, I felt better through the pandemic being able to send my children to school in a safe environment And now with the current strain in the vaccination status and all of the things that we have learned in the past 2 years, it is safer for children to be in school, to remove the masks. We've come so far and we've learned so much in 2 years. So now is the time. In the future, will things change? Absolutely. As the virus continues to change, our measures will have to change. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public want to address the board? Public comment is now closed.
Mr. Chair, can I offer a change in our agenda to table the next item due to the reports? And I don't want to take away from the quality of the reports and people's distractions for what's next. I think it's important that we hear everything and take it all in before we address more of a charging point. I just don't think it's properly placed in our agenda.
We have a recommendation to amend the agenda that's already been approved. Is that a motion, Commissioner Marcus?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion just to table it to the end of the meeting. And hopefully you guys respect the fact, the reason why I want to do that is the fact that there's so much information. We've heard it from the people themselves that we need to take it. We need to be able to listen to what the report's about. If we're distracted over the results, whether they're good or bad or whatever, we're not going to get the full value of the reports that people put their heart and work into and all the topics that would proceed. So I think we should move that at the bottom and then deal with all the agenda items regarding the health department first.
Are you suggesting that the reports that we get here won't be written reports as it says on the agenda?
I'm just asking that everything that the health department provides us information for us is important and we should put that first. So we're not distracted by it later.
So you used the word table, but you just meant take number 9 and put it before 7. Is that what you're saying?
Number 9 is the addressing the letter. I want to move it to the bottom.
Wait.
That's all.
I still don't follow you. I mean, I understand that you want to do something, but tell me what number you want to move and where do you want to move it? There's no tabling here.
You're right. I want to move number 7.
Move number 7.
The resignation letter.
To the last topic, which would be
number 7 and number 8, then the discussion.
if they're both related. Yeah.
You want number 7 to go.
Oh, 7 and 8. You're right. 7 and 8.
You want 7 and 8 to go where?
At the last topics.
The last topic meaning what?
The last topic on our agenda. I mean, they're numbered.
What number is it going to come
11,
after?
12, 13, 14. It'd be 15 and 16.
So after 14, you want 7 and 8? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, could you call the meeting to order, please?
7 and 8 move to the last objects on our, which happens to be what is
Don't call it last object. Give me a number.
I just
7
did 14
go
and 15.
Okay, well, that's 2 numbers.
14 is the last.
Mr.
committee
Marcus,
report,
hold
number
on,
14. I'm just trying to avoid, there's common sense here that we need to address.
Okay. I believe the motion is to move item 7 and 8 to just above item 15, which would be public comment at the end of our agenda. Is that accurate, Mr. Marcus?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have a motion to amend the agenda and renumber moving items 7 and 8 currently to item number 14. It's been moved. Do we have a second? Mr. Dream. Correct. Correct.
Now there's another motion to amend the agenda.
I thought that one applies when you change it. And you're moving something that's different.
Well, we don't, at this point, we did not have a second to amend the agenda. So the motion dies. Item number 7 is the resignation letter from Ms. Peacock. I will entertain a motion to accept that letter as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Wait. I'm sorry, you got to accept. Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Coontz?
Yes. I'd like to move that we do not accept Ms. Peacock's resignation at this time.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Coontz and seconded by Mr. McInnes that we do not accept the resignation letter. Have a voice vote, please.
You have discussion.
We can have discussion, certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. McInnes, I assume you want to speak.
Thank you for asking. It's important to note that what looks like a resignation letter is in fact a constructive termination, as her attorney has stated. Because the first sentence, she says, it's with a heavy heart I submit my resignation. But the second sentence is, this decision is completely due to the hostile work environment created by some of the members of the Health Department of Northwest Board of Health. So if this board accepts this resignation, which in fact is a termination, I think that you can expect prompt communication from the health officer's attorney. And I am in a position in Emmett County to protect the interests of Emmett County, as is Mr. Coontz, I think, I'm sure. And so I think that one ought to be very careful about accepting a letter that is in fact a letter of constructive termination. I don't think you will find it to be a good idea. Thank you.
Mr. Marcus.
I just would like to expand on your explanation of constructive termination and how it comes, how is that come into play? I mean, this is to play on words, to be honest with you. If I give a resignation, I'm basically saying I'm quitting my job, but no, you're firing me. Can you explain what you mean by that?
I would invite an attorney to explain.
Okay. So you're asking us to vote on something, but you didn't consult with attorney on, so that's definitely a topic we should.
I assure you, we have had plenty of consultation with the appropriate expert.
I
This
wish I
is
had
not
a letter in front of me. I
casual
don't.
Mr. Chairman, I also think it's reckless to take certain actions without advice of an attorney, especially of this nature. And I have a hard time being put in this position for you to expect me to take a reckless vote, a termination of something that we really don't have a solid legal opinion on.
The board's attorney is not present. She's currently on vacation. I think it is, I think the letter frankly took me by surprise. But it is a letter that attaches a time frame given the current contract of our public health officer. There are timeframes that are attached to her employment contract, specifically the 60 days that is referred to in the letter. Is there any further discussion from the board?
Asked to see that copy. I don't have one with me.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that I'm opposed to the motion. I think at this time, it's probably a proper time to say that we have our differences and it's time to part ways. We can recognize that we've all made mistakes in our lives, and sometimes it's time to say that we have a difference of opinion and it's time to part ways. So I would speak in opposition to the motion.
About to make another mistake if we do this without advice of an attorney.
And Scott, I have to mention that you were hesitant in November when there was the termination, and you, after hearing from Jim Young, said, you know, you hesitant, but you chose not to vote to terminate, and I would submit this as another vote to terminate. I hate to, I'm not trying to call you out.
No,
just remember.
I stand by the vote that I made in November. This was not, this letter of resignation was not sought by this board. So I would disagree with you, and neither of us are attorneys.
Right.
We do have an attorney present, although he doesn't, while he represents Charlotte County, I don't think he represents this Board of Health other than perhaps Commissioner Roloff and myself. So I don't want to throw him under the bus without being prepared to address that issue. Anything further from the board? Yes, Mr. Marcus.
Being the newest person of the board, I came here for the exact opposite reason that was outlined in this letter, to be honest with you. I feel like I've been accused of doing something. I have only one party of one meeting, and it's truly not fair. Being listed as new members of the board, creating a hostile work environment. Being new, remember, I don't know a whole lot about the history. I'm a spectator like most of you. I only know what I know from people saying in public comments and so on, to be quite truthful. But reading this letter, the only thing I got out of it, the only thing hostile about it was really the appointment and the reaction. I felt that was more hostile than me being on this board. And I'm take it more personal in that way, because I can speak freely because I wasn't part of the past vote. I wasn't somebody who voted to remove the health officer. I got him. I was appointed here by my board to represent a vacant seat, and that's what I intended to do. I responded to the public comment person who sent me a TED talk, and I have to admit, my true heart is in mental health, and I've always been that way. And so that's what caught my attention. So I wanted to hear what this person had to say. And it's funny, the whole thing was about the integrity and respect. And so I was like, I want to know what this person had to say about integrity and respect. But what's happened is we had multiple years of giant success in every area. But you know how it is, when you make one mistake, you get to lie on that sword sometimes. And in this particular case, the public spoke and they said, we don't like this one mistake. But the integrity and respect, the people didn't get that integrity and respect. They didn't get heard. They lost the respect of, they lost respect for the leadership. So I want to just twist a little bit in the forms of the fact that, look at what the people thought and why we're here. This has nothing to do with the services. This has nothing to do with the people who work here. I have been a champion cheerleader for this health department for years, reading every single report. And unfortunately, that's all we get as a commissioners. We look forward to annual reports. And the annual reports, believe me, there's a lot of questions. Everybody wants to know what's going on and how successful they are. And I don't want to go on too much, but I haven't had much opportunity to speak because I haven't been here long enough. So pardon me for a few more seconds here. The letter is clear that the person has really lost the desire to do the job. And I found this as an indication of resignation. I had no intentions to vote to remove the officer, to be honest with you. That was something that was going to move forward in the future as to how we could heal the department. Well, this basically let's lit that on fire. Well, there is no other option. We've been told I want to resign and it's all your fault. So there.
Further discussion from the board, Ms. Roloff.
I'm sitting here and I'm probably confused like a lot of you people are out in the audience. It's confused. I've been around longer than most of them on this board. And I've been through a lot with the health department. We do have an excellent director. No, but whatever, against her service and all the people that work for her and with her. And I see a lot of faces out here over the years I've seen. And no, I didn't want Lisa to resign. I mean, that just broke my heart because she has given a lot to our communities, both 4 counties. And when I came in tonight, I thought, oh golly, well, maybe we could get her turned back around, which I think this board would have liked to have done. And you know, I look at what you've done over the years, Lisa. I've been at all the meetings where you've been bashed. And I think to myself and I think, what would I do? Well, sometimes in your lifetime, you say, I've done it, I've been there, I've done it. And why should I get batted around any longer? That's what I'm looking at. And it's, you can only take so much from people. And everyone up here, sitting up here, I'm sure, and sometimes in your life, you've gotten mad at your neighbor or somebody else, or they got mad at you, whatever. And it's hard to be friends again. And I'm saying I would give anything in the world to give this lady a chance to come back and do her job. One thing that she did that the government was telling her to do, she did. And I'm thinking, now it's heartbreaking. And all the kids, I've got grandkids, I've got great grandkids. And they had to go through the mess. And I'm thinking, now that it's all called off, I pray every day that this doesn't happen to our kids. The kids aren't going to be wearing masks. And what's going to happen? Well, we got the future to look forward to. And God help that none of the kids, because they don't have the mask, they don't have the right mask to begin with. Now, simple as that. But I'm just saying, I would, if I could, I'd possibly say, Lisa, give us a chance again. Let us see if we can work our difference out. I don't believe in. Did you say my time was up?
I did not.
Somebody did. I don't know who it was, but I would just like to say, if we could get back on the track and say, you come back, let's work with you. Let's all of us work up here. These are new people up here for me too. I'm the only one here that's been here for all this time, you know, so I look around so you know how old I am. But I'm willing to work with everybody. Let's do something good for our communities. Let's try to work together. One way or the other, let's try to get this thing taken care of. And it's going to be hard. I know that we aren't going to be able to do it next week or the week after. But I'd like to see you gentlemen say, I'm willing to go ahead. Let's do something. And I'm asking Lisa if she would ever back down, back up or whatever, you know, but it's up to us as a board to work with the health department and get it back on it. I don't want to close the door, and I don't think anybody out here wants to close the door. There's too much that goes on over there, and there's too much help to our people. So thank you.
Ms. Powers.
Thank you. Everything that I've seen in the media recently has come from Ms. Peacock. I have yet to see any evidence of the things that have been stated in those letters and articles in the paper. I know that this board, in the entire board, is not guilty of the things that she has accused us of doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Any further comment from the board? Any further discussion? We do have a motion from Commissioner Kuntz. I want to see if I have your motion correct here, Matt, and feel free to correct me. We have a motion to reject the letter of resignation from Ms. Peacock. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, a yes vote would be.
A yes vote would be to reject the letter of resignation.
Thank you.
Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Am I on? Pallerito,
No.
Powers,
No.
Rubing,
No.
Marcus,
No.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hankins,
No.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Coons.
Yes.
5-3, that motion has failed. Please, folks, I know this is a hot button issue, but let's please maintain our decorum.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to accept the letter of resignation from Mrs. Peacock. And I would like to thank her for her years of service to these 4 counties.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved by Commissioner Rubing, seconded by Commissioner Powers to accept the letter of resignation. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Marcus.
As I stated earlier, when someone gives me a resignation as a business owner, that means they don't want to work for me anymore. It's hard to heal that. So
Thank you. Any further discussion from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Coons.
To simply accept this resignation without some plan for transition, without some talk of negotiated severance and a time for transition and all that sort of thing. I don't think that's a good idea. I think we need to have a third party negotiate some sort of severance in this situation that will include a waiver of liability and that will give this board a way forward and give Ms. Peacock a way forward.
I appreciate your comments, sir. Ms. Peacock, in her letter, states, and I quote, "For reasons stated here, this letter serves as my required 60 days notice. My last day will be April 29th, 2022. Unless the board wishes that I depart earlier, a scenario I am willing to negotiate." Ms. Peacock, if you can direct an email to me indicating those terms, I would appreciate that. And once Ms. Vogler is back, we can probably continue discussion there. Any further comment from the board, Mr. Coons?
Yes, that's unclear about what the transition process will be. It's unclear about any sort of severance that might be offered. And it's also unclear about any waiver of liability that should be in place.
At this point, there's been no request made, sir, other than the terms of her existing contract.
And an offer to negotiate, which is why I think it would be prudent of us to appoint a third party to negotiate the severance, to negotiate the transition, and to make arrangements for that to happen.
Okay. Your point is noted, sir. Any further discussion from the board? You will notice item number 8 is discussion of a health officer transition plan, which we will discuss after we are finished with item number 7 on our agenda. Is there any further discussion from the board?
Scott.
Sir.
So I guess now I'm not clear. So you've asked Mrs. Peacock, who I think will turn that responsibility over to her attorney, to reply to your question. And I believe, or I presume, that her attorney then would contact the attorney for the Board of Health. I presume. I don't know.
Well, actually, what I suggested is that she respond to me in an email, but if we want to have the attorneys continue that discussion, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, I think that's
That's, I think it's probably out of our hands
You got
because the attorneys have been activated, so to speak, and that's not the right legalese, Mr. Jarima, forgive me, but that's where we are.
Okay. Then I am guessing that we're not asking her to do anything tonight. We are going to wait for communication
Correct,
and then things will unfold.
correct.
But we're not going to do anything tonight.
I would assume that we will have another closed session with our attorney to discuss those personnel matters.
That's what I was waiting to hear. Not because I wanted to hear it. I was just expecting that's what I would hear. Okay, good. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Let Ms. Roloff, you have a question or a statement?
I have a question. Now I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be getting ready to vote. And I don't know what Assembly bill I'm supposed to be voting.
I'm gonna restate Mr. Rubing's motion in just a moment here. Is there any further discussion from the board regarding this issue? Any further discussion? Hearing none, Commissioner Rubing has made a motion to accept the letter of resignation from Ms. Peacock. Is that a correct restating of your motion, sir? That motion was seconded by Commissioner Powers. So a vote yes would be to accept the letter of resignation. A vote no would be to deny that.
Thank you.
Jennifer, if we can have a voice vote, please.
Okay. Roloff,
No.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
No.
Kuntz,
No.
Pallerito,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. The letter of resignation is accepted and the board thanks Ms. Peacock for her years of service. Item number 8 is the discussion of the health officer transition. So the board is aware. I made a few phone calls after receipt of this letter. Have a transition plan, at least begin to formulate a plan. I did speak with Dr. Meyerson, who is in agreement that he will maintain his position as the medical director for Health Department of Northwest Michigan. So he would still be the medical director. And I did speak with Dan Thorell, who was recently appointed a deputy health officer. And I asked Dan if in the interim, while we post Ms. Peacock's position, if Dan would be willing to serve in that administrative type role. He indicated that he would. So having said that, and I only made those phone calls as a matter of trying to put some type of plan together. I didn't want the board to, there is nothing official until this board votes to do so. Okay. And I want to state that. But I wanted to have at least some plan formulated so that we can keep the wheels on and keep the services provided that that this health department has provided for a number of years. So I will now open it up for the board's discussion. Mr. Kuntz, you have that look on your face.
Well, thank you. So who will you intend will take Mr. Thorell's duties then while he's running the Board of Health?
He did not indicate that he wouldn't be able to fulfill that still. He is the supervisor of the environmental health. Thank you, Mr. Jones. I was going to look in the back for the proper terminology. Mike Jones is back there as well. Mike and Dan work very closely together, and I'm sure that I don't know if Dan does a lot of the day-to-day operation. I know that he has been a good supervisor in his role now.
Mr. Chair, Dan is on Zoom, just so you know, if you needed.
Thank you, Ms. Peacock. And actually, I think Jennifer had told me that. So Mr. Thorell, can you hear me, sir?
I sure can.
Okay. Do you want to address Mr. Kuntz's concern there?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, to fill the interim role for the health officer, it's meant to be a short-term role, hopefully, as the board, does a search for a new health officer. And so my role right now as deputy health officer, which I recently moved into, would not be filled because I would basically, once the health officer position is filled, would move back to that role. Right now, we're actively recruiting for an environmental health director, which basically fills my previous position. So lots of chess pieces moving, but we have a plan. So
Did
and I just want to also say, I mean, my goal would just be to keep the department moving forward in a positive direction. I mean, we have, many great employees and who are very passionate about the programs and services that we offer. And, I don't know everybody, but I'm, familiar with most people and the programs and learning more as, every day that I'm there. But I feel very confident that I can, keep things stable and moving in the right direction. And that would really be, my goal, because, our services and the public that rely on them are very important to me.
Dan, did I accurately state our conversation regarding you possibly acting as an interim?
Yes.
Okay. And you are, if I can paraphrase, you are willing to serve in an interim capacity as a health officer?
Yes, understanding, I think we'd have to have, some discussions about the details, about how that works and things of that nature. But yes, that's my intention.
Okay, thank you. And just briefly, Dan, how many years have you personally worked in public health?
26 years.
Okay.
And that's mostly, been in the, environmental health arena, but, the past 6-7 years really been more geared towards administration. So, but a long time.
Okay, thank you, Dan. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Pallarito.
I would like to nominate Mr. Thorell as interim health officer until time that the personnel and committee can find a permanent replacement for health officer of Health Department, Northwest Michigan.
Are you making a motion to that effect, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The motion it's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Marcus. For further discussion from the board. Mr. McInnes.
To preserve Emmett County's legal position and to not acknowledge or to preserve our position, I will be inclined to vote against the transition plan because it might be interpreted as an acknowledgement that I accepted her resignation. So personally, although I think Dan is phenomenally well qualified, I think that if I voted for a transition, it would imply that I voted to accept the resignation, which I do not. So I will be inclined to vote no.
All right, sir. Any further comment, Mr. Kuntz?
I heard mention of a personnel committee. Is that a sitting committee that we have on this board?
I believe it's the
Personnel and Finance.
Yeah, Personnel and Finance Committee.
And is there some sort of time frame for this interim position? For instance, is this something that we expect to fulfill or post in a few weeks, a few months? I would suggest that we run an interim position for about 1 year from right now. And after, in early 2023, we begin searching for another executive because I think the climate that any director would walk into right now would be, I'm not sure this is a good time for that to happen. I think we should have an interim position, expect it for about a year, not say exactly a year, but expect to start the search in 2023.
Mr. Chair, can I share some information?
Please.
Please.
So there's a process that you have to follow with MDHHS regarding this, and I'd be happy to share the information with the contact that you would need to talk to there. But generally, their practice is to appoint an interim, the MDHHS has to approve the appointment of an interim health officer, and generally they appoint that person or approve that person for 6 months.
Okay.
And then it can be extended. But generally, that's the time frame that they use. And then they also assign them a mentor who's another health officer at a local health department to help them with the transition, in addition to the staff at the local agency and our, local partners as well. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. That is
Thank you.
helpful, Ms. Peacock. Mr. Marcus.
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking, at the county levels, we all seek professional services to help assist with the search. Is there such a service that does that outside that we hire in?
For lack of a better term,
Headhunter.
headhunter or
So much. I'm not talking about
Okay.
your general Indeed. I'm talking something higher level.
Okay. Ms. Peacock, can you address that?
I have not heard of that, but generally the Michigan Association of Local Public Health and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is good about spreading the word through their networks. So that and those can be state, national, and local networks. So it'd be good for you to have a conversation with the local health services contact there.
Can you email me the contact name and number so that we can begin that process if that's the desire of the board?
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This would, I think, also on the motion, well, it's been moved and seconded. I would make the amendment that at this time, Mr. Thorell's position would begin on April 30th of 2022, unless there is a negotiated time frame that changes that.
Could you review that process? I think I know what it is. Could you review that process of how we're going to negotiate this transition?
I think Ms. Peacock will be in contact with her attorney, who will maintain the contact with Ms. Vogler. And any desires on her part or on the board's part can be discussed between the attorneys. And then, as Mr. McGinnis has stated, thankfully, we'll have probably a closed session to discuss all of those details. Or let me say this too. This is a rabbit trail. I am all about governmental transparency, ladies and gentlemen. But understand, in the world that we live in, I disagree with Shakespeare. We should not kill all the lawyers. You're welcome, John. The attorneys have been active at this time and will continue that. So,
Scott, thank you for that.
yes. So
That's the only reference. Do you have any other references to Shakespeare?
I think I made that one up, Charlie.
Thank you.
I hope I got it semi right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Pallarito, if I can amend your
Yes.
motion.
Yes, I like your
Okay,
amendment, please.
So Mr. Pallarito made the motion that we appoint Dan Thorell, a current deputy health officer with Health Department Northwest, to act as an interim health officer beginning on April 30th, 2022, unless or until there is a change in Ms. Peacock's departure. Do you accept that amendment, Mr. Marcus?
I question whether or not we should include the approval into that. She mentioned it being approval by MDHHS, so I was wondering if that's something we should include into to be official.
I think if you said contingent upon DHHS approval, I think that would
I
address the
think that's
risk.
an
right?
important.
Contingent upon
I don't
DHHS
wanna go
approval.
think we're
Please
gonna
add
ignore
that.
everybody and do what we want.
Yeah.
Right, contingent upon approval. That's a great point. Jennifer, how's your shorthand? Hold on. I would like you, because I've made some notes, but I would like you to restate the motion as you understand it, please.
All right.
Thank God we tape it. So Pallerito made a motion that the interim health officer.
Let
would-
me, hold on, John, I'm
Oh.
going to interrupt you.
Okay.
Because I think I know that you depend on the recording.
Yeah.
And I've made some notes along the way.
Okay, go
If I
ahead.
can restate Mr. Pallerito's motion, it's that we appoint Dan Thorell, a current deputy health officer with the Health Department Northwest, as the interim health officer beginning on April 30th of 2022, unless,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll get there.
Oh, yeah, you're.
Unless
sorry.
and until there is a earlier separation by Ms. Peacock, contingent upon approval by MDHHS.
Got it.
I'm sure of that. And Mr. Marcus, are you okay with?
I am.
Mr. Pallerito, you're okay with
Yes, sir.
that wording? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board?
Not sure we seconded and voted on the amendment to the motion.
Do we have a second on?
It was counted as a friendly amendment
Okay.
because the maker and the seconder both approved of it. So it was a friendly amendment.
We agreed upon it, yes.
Okay.
So was Marcus the second?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any further discussion on the board before we vote on that motion? Hearing none. Jennifer, can we have a voice vote, please?
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
No,
Coons,
No,
Pallerito,
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
I believe the motion is 6-2 and the motion is passed. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item number 9, staff reports. Ms. Peacock.
Okay. I am passing out a paper that will just sort of inform my written report that I shared. So I don't know if I'm close enough to this, but first of all, before I get started, I wanted to make an introduction. You've been introduced to Dan Thorell. He's been present at past board meetings. We have a second deputy health officer who will continue as deputy health officer as Dan assumes, if everything is approved, the interim health officer role, and that is Holly Campbell. So Holly, if you could stand up and just say hello. Holly is currently a nursing supervisor, or it was most currently a nursing supervisor at Health Department in Northwest Michigan. She came to us from District Health Department number 2, where she served as the deputy health officer there. She and Dan have very complementary skill sets, and the volume of work that we have now, as you heard from many of the staff, is really incredible how much everything has grown in the past couple of years, especially in our family health division, our community health division, and our environmental health division has also, taken on this huge lab expansion as well. And so the two of them as deputies have had a really complementary skill set to provide oversight for all of that, support our leadership teams, and I know that they will provide great support for the health department going forward. So they have kind of opposite backgrounds, which is really great. We're excited to have Holly on board too. So I wanted to introduce her to you, make sure you had seen her face.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then My report, so in keeping with the last few months, and the Personnel and Finance Committee actually, and I, at the time of my evaluation in December, sort of planned what we were going to focus the director reports on during the first few meetings, given that we weren't having separate orientation sessions this year. And so, at the first meeting, we covered the governance of the local health department. And I've tried to provide you with resources that can be helpful to you. It's a lot, it's overwhelming. It's a very, complex field. And so, I hope those resources have been helpful to you. The second meeting, we looked at the financing of public health, where our revenue comes from, how we make everything work. Local appropriations are part of our revenue, but really a fairly small chunk of the revenue, but a really important foundation for lots of the other revenue sources that we have. That funding allows us to pay for some services that don't have complete funding to cover the costs of providing those services, or sometimes that funding is used to draw down a match, which basically allows us to double that amount of county appropriation. So we use that funding very strategically. I wanted you to have a glimpse of our services. This certainly is not everything. On the organizational chart that I sent you, or passed around, you can see that on one side there are the people, and on the other side are the programs. And so as you look across the bottom, you can see all of the different programs listed. All of our services, or many of our services, are required, and required equals three different things. It could be it's a basic service, it could be that it's a mandated service, and it could be that it's an essential public health service. And so those are all required by some sort of statute, law, or rule. And those services, environmental health, many of the environmental health services fall into those categories. Dan provided that information in his written report to you this month. I focused more on our family and community health services that fall in those areas. And I tried to just kind of simplify what's in that local governing entity booklet. That's where this information comes from. There's more detail there. They certainly do cite the law that requires that particular service. But one thing you don't have in the booklet that I included here is what division that service is in. And maybe it goes by a different name in our agency. And so, for example, immunizations falls under our family health division. And it is required by several different laws, and as well as the state, in the state budget under the essential local public health services. So you can go through and see the variety of services that we provide. When you get to the bottom, it talks about allowable services. If services in public health are not required, they may be provided, and they're allowed to be provided as part of meeting the community's current health needs. So if you look at our listing of services under the regional planning and our community health division, a lot of those programs do not fall under required services, but you can see they're grouped into areas of behavioral health, substance abuse prevention, nutrition and physical activity, and basic needs of living. And those are the current needs that have been demonstrated on our community health needs assessment that is conducted every 3 years, very consistently over the last couple of cycles. Those are the needs of our community. We may not have funding to provide those services, but we are charged with providing services that meet the community's needs. So that's where we write a lot of grants. We build for everything we can. We enter into innovative partnerships so that we can share funding and share staffing across health department jurisdictions. The contract with Benzie-Leelanau and with District Health Department number 4 to share administrative services. The whole purpose of that contract is to create efficiencies and to create consistency and quality in these public health services across the region. You're taking advantage of economy of scale. It's a really important strategy in rural areas to be able to do that. And we only are able to provide many of these services through those partnerships. So I won't take a long time tonight. I just wanted to explain what I had shared with you. I always welcome you to come in and sit and talk with me about anything you have questions about. I have reached out to every new board member when they come on and offered that opportunity, and I still would welcome that at any time.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the board have any questions for Ms. Peacock regarding the breakdown that she's provided or her report?
Yeah.
Mr. McInnes.
I talked too much. I was going to say, if your associate to the right wants to talk, that's fine.
Mr. Marcus.
Just a question on page, what are we, page 16 or 17 on my computer. So it's the environmental health breakdown with Eagle. I've always been curious about how much of those fees we actually get to be able to reuse and how much of that plays into the grant procedures. I've always want to know just how much we are able to leverage those two.
I think with that question best be directed to Dan.
Yeah, if Dan is available to
Okay.
answer it. I'm trying to get to the page in the packet, so.
Mr. Thorell, are you still with us?
I am. So are you talking about, Commissioner Marcus, are you talking about fees that are collected for like permits?
Well, I'm reading the list of services, much of
Okay.
which I've had to pay over the years in the form of a fee.
Right.
Everything from drinking water, septics, on-site public water, wastewaters, food protections. Those are all fees that are collected from your businesses that do food. So I'm curious, of those fees and the grants that we might be able to receive, how much of it we get here, or does it go to the state?
Well, actually, so the funding that we receive from the state, it's, so the main core programs like food protection, private and public onsite wastewater, private and public water supplies are considered essential local public health services. And it is supposed to be a 50-50 cost share for that, although it's more like a 30% cost share from the state. So the funding that we do receive from the state does not cover everything. And that's why we charge fees for that, to basically cover our costs, make sure that we can, provide the services to satisfy the requirements from the state. And that has been an ongoing issue, for many, many years about, getting the state to provide their, fair share. And that's, an issue that continues today. Yeah, so really the fees are needed to make sure that we can adequately provide those services. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
That's been an important point of advocacy over the past few years, our health departments together. And there have been many times that we've taken Board of Health members with us to Lansing to advocate for that 50-50 cost share and increasing those funds for essential local public health services. We did receive 2 increases from the state in the past few years, which is, good progress, but it's not enough. It's still not reaching that 50% that they're supposed to achieve.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Ms. Peacock regarding her information?
Yeah, I have one.
Mr.
There's
McInnes.
Nobody else. Lisa, Emmett County, of course, has PFAS issue up at the airport. And I had talked about that before, and I read through the materials and I was reminded of that. Does that fall under something called a non-community public water supply under environmental health? It's just my trivia question at the beginning. Is that where it is?
It's not, right, Dan? Not that.
Yeah, I can answer that. So the non-community water supply program is what we call type 2, which the type 2 program, which you might be more familiar with. Basically, that program has to deal with public wells, public water supplies, like at hotels, restaurants, businesses that have more than 25 employees, that type of thing. The PFAS response is very specific. So the funding that we're receiving from MDHHS, it's a very direct grant that goes directly for that particular response. So what we do is we work on a budget to determine, what we're going to need, as far as staff time and supplies and things like that, like the filters that we provide folks in Pellston comes from that budget. When we were offering bottled water before we got all the filters installed, that was coming from that budget. So, and if there was another, hopefully not, but if there was another PFAS contamination area that was discovered, there would be a completely new budget through MDHHS that would be created for that.
Is that an expanding activity or is it, do you know the boundaries of it right now?
The boundaries of the contamination?
No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't ask that question. I mean, the boundaries of your work burden do you think it's predictable how much work you're going to be spending on this, or is it continuing to be an evolving process?
I think in the situation with Pelston, it is definitely more predictable at this point. It's stabilized. The contamination is obviously a very heavy burden for the citizens there. But we have filters to all the wells that were impacted and for the people that wanted them. And the wells are continuing to be resampled about every 6 months. So we think we know at that rate, we've been adding about 10 to 15 filters, at that rate so far. So that's kind of what we budgeted on for fiscal year 22. So
okay.
The thing that's unknown is if we had another site. That would basically require us to, respond to that particular site, whether it was in a different county or, a different area, but it would be still within the jurisdiction of the Health Department of Northwest Michigan. So that is the big unknown. And that's what we all, worry about, that, something like that's going to pop up. And that takes, when those initial response efforts takes a lot of resources.
Do you do the testing for PFAS, testing of water supplies, or is that some other agency?
That is actually between Eagle and MDHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services. So Eagle does any new ones that pop up, and then the initial response, and then for the continuous resampling of the wells in Pelston, for instance, that is through MDHHS. They have contractors that schedule and go out and contact all the residents and set up a time to come and take a sample, and then they'll get the results in a few weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Dr. Myerson.
Well, I guess to add on to what Dan said, I think to make clear things like PFAS or the TCE plumes or other kind of environmental threats that are out there that can happen. When you talk about the budgeting for it, there was no money for PFAS.
Right.
When we got notified that there was contamination in Pelston, and there were several homes who had issues where their drinking water no longer felt to be safe to drink, it just necessitated our response. That's just part of why counties have a health department and why you need a strong health department. There was no there's a budget for that.
Right.
There was no budget. That's part of what you pay for with your local appropriations to have people. So when our former director, Scott Kondersky, was buying bottled water at the store and driving it out and with some other sanitarians, literally just delivering water, that was just on our time, and that was on your time.
Yeah.
Knowing that, well, maybe we'll get some money to help cover these costs, but when it's an emergency, that is part of what those local appropriations are for. They aren't categorical, but we don't have people just sitting around waiting for an emergency. It's just a part of the basic structure and why you need some basic infrastructure of public health, whether it's, and there's always something, there were the issues in Big Harbor with the water, the TCE plume that's been ongoing as long as I've been here in Antrim County, and just necessitate some environmental health people that have skills and knowledge that I don't have, and it takes ongoing work, and that's part of what local appropriations is.
I would say that Emmett County had the exact same experience. We were not sitting waiting for something of this nature until Tip of the Mitt worked with the Pelston High School kids to do a little experiment, and lo and behold, there was a problem that had existed that we weren't aware of it. So a lot of agencies were suddenly front and center. So thank you for all of that.
Any other questions from the board? Ladies and gentlemen, we have been sitting now for 2 hours. And I'll be frank, I need to use the restroom. So I'm going to recommend to the board that we take 7 or 8 minutes. Actually, I'm going to call a recess for the next 7 or 8 minutes. We will resume when all the board members are back in their chairs.
Kevin, it's cold, baby.
Members of the board are seated again, and we will call the meeting back to order at Jennifer. No, Jennifer's not here.
There's a line.
There might be a line, yes.
Yeah, I was going on.
Okay, she had an assistant there. I'm wondering if he can restart the recording.
I don't see him either.
I don't see him either. There's 2 lines.
We got a bathroom.
Chris is working on it.
I'm sorry?
He's good.
Recording. Okay.
Of course,
So-
it's over there.
We will call the meeting back to order at 6:40 PM. We've accepted the report from Ms. Peacock. We had the written report submitted by all of the directors. Are there any questions from any board members regarding any of the submitted reports?
I have one.
Mr. Rubing,
Is Dan still on?
Jennifer will get us there in just a
yes.
moment.
There he
I
is.
believe.
Yes.
I know you talked about PFAS a lot already, but
Yeah.
just, I know it's a common item that was used in firefighting material. It's actually used in a lot of other stuff too.
Yes.
Just, this doesn't have to take a long time, maybe take a minute. I would like your opinion on how are we doing in cutting down on our use of it? I mean, so we got a problem in Pellston. I don't want a problem in Antrim County. You know what I mean? So how can we try to keep something, if we know what causes it, are we looking for alternatives or where are we at on that front?
Yes. I think a lot of the chemicals that were used in a lot of those products, there are new chemicals that, have basically replaced those in a lot of situations. Although even those new ones, there's concerns about. I can tell you that the EPA is just starting to list these forever chemicals, as they're known, as toxic, where they weren't in the past. I think they've been used in so many different things that it just takes time to kind of go through and find replacements for those. And as far as I know, I believe right now, firefighting foam that's used at airports still contains, PFAS compounds, because it is the best thing that's out there for putting out an aircraft fire. Which, if my loved one was on an airplane that crashed, I want them to use that stuff. Right now, I think the way that airports are dealing with it is they have a plan for, if that does happen, of immediate cleanup. And then also, where a lot of the contamination has occurred at airports, specifically in military bases, was due to training, because they would just, during training would use the real foam and spray it all over the place. So now they don't do that. They use other ways to train. So it's been used in solvents in the past, in industrial settings, or even light industrial settings, tool and die shops, and that has ceased for the most part. And I think it just it takes a while to turn a battleship with those type of chemicals that are just prolific throughout what is being used in our economy. And I can tell you that they're handled a lot better than they were. They started using them back in the 50s, 60s. And, back at that time, things were not, necessarily handled properly, and often dumped, on the ground, or into a stream or something of that nature. So from that standpoint, we've come a long way. So to answer your question, it is, a work in progress. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Mr. Marcus.
Question is for Jane Schumacher. Is she here?
Jane
Jane
is, I
Sunmacher.
think Jane is on Zoom, so she may not be a panelist. Let's see. Can you tell Chris? Can we, is it possible to elevate her to panelist? Okay, so get
You
her
might-
elevated.
She is available?
Yeah, she's on. She just isn't a
Okay.
panelist, so he's just gotta get her set up.
My question is regarding the regional planning division for the community health innovation region. So not knowing much about it, I'm curious to know who's on that advisory board, I would call it. And it represents a large, pretty much all of northern Michigan. So I'm just curious as to who's on that board, who's on that planning advisory committee.
Did you hear that?
I think you're referring to the governing body for the Shire.
I didn't hear.
The governing body for the
has
Shire.
to-
Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I'm reading something and I'm only reading this to you because I don't know. So I'm being honest here. The Regional Planning Division is responsible for programs and services for Northern Michigan Community Health Innovation Region. Later on, it goes that the Chief Health Officer uses the results of the regional collaborative of MI Thrive needs assessment. So when I look at that, I question, okay, so who's making those decisions for our regions for it to be carried out by the health officer? And are they represented by all the people in those regions or just, and how are they appointed and who appoints them?
That's a really great question. And the governing body or the steering committee for the Northern Michigan Community Health Innovation Region has specific requirements from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, who's our primary funder. And so it's required to have leaders from local public health, community mental health, hospitals, Medicaid health plans, and coordinated care. In our region, those agencies are the Northern Physicians Organization and Northern Michigan Health Partners. In addition, we also have latitude to invite additional people to join that governing body who either address some of the social determinants of health, like housing, transportation, access to healthcare, or who serve people who are enrolled in Medicaid. So there's representative that the Shire, the original Shire is a 10-county region. It's what's generally referred to as Michigan Prosperity Region 2. So it includes Antrim, Charlevoix, and Emmett counties, but it does not include Otsego. And it has very wide representation from across that whole region. There's about 22 people who serve on that governing body.
One thing that I'll just add to that is I think in the first paragraph, there may be a typo that's making it a little bit confusing. When it says at the system level, governing bodies serve the role of the chief health officer. I think you meant chief health strategist, didn't you, Jane?
Yes, I did. I'm so
And
sorry.
then again, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
So in the first paragraph where it says, and I think this is what you were asking about, at the system level, governing bodies serve the role of the chief health officer
Yeah.
using results. It's actually supposed to say chief health strategist.
Oh, thank you.
And that's, yeah, and so that governing body serves as that strategist to look at the health needs across the region from the health assessment and then develop programming to meet those needs with community
You
partners.
can see how that changes the whole thing,
It
right?
does.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
referring to
That's
me.
a big mistake.
Thank you, Jane. Are there any other questions from the board regarding any of these submitted written reports? Hearing none, we'll thank the directors for submitting the reports. And we'll turn the page on our agenda. Item number 10, updated legal costs associated with mask mandate litigation update. This is requested by Commissioner Rubing. Kirsten, you want to open that?
I think we got a handout right here. No, it's just a continuation on what I asked last month. Antrim County's had various lawsuits and we usually get an update every month. So this, if I'm reading it right, shows about $2,000 related to employee related issues and about $85,000 related to attorney fees having to do with the lawsuit and Board of Health Services having to do with the lawsuit.
I can give a brief overview if you want me to and answer a couple outstanding questions if you think that would help.
I would appreciate that.
Okay. All right. So there's several different law firms listed here. Plunkett and Cooney, the first one, we have a longstanding relationship with Laura Dinan from the Petoskey office of Plunkett and Cooney. She provides services to the health department for any kind of employment related issue. She's a human resources attorney. So she works closely with our HR manager. And if we have questions about, things that our HR manager is not able to answer, any potential legal issues that come up around employees in general, Laura is the attorney that we consult. She also has access to lawyers with different types of expertise. So she's helped us get connected for services related to other things in the past. Shirley and Julie, remember we had a breach of contract issue related to a software product that we were involved in developing. And it was an attorney from Plunkett and Cooney that Laura connected us with that helped us through that breach of contract issue. So Laura also helped us with our volunteer agreements during the pandemic, with our partnership agreements with like the testing site at the Emmett County Fairgrounds, things like that. So that is Laura's role, and she's real specialized in that contractual human resources area. Foster, Swift, Collins, and Smith is the Laura Genovich, the attorney who is representing the health department with Lisa Vogler as co-counsel, although Laura really has taken the lead in the Let Them Breathe lawsuit and the Concerned Citizens of Emmett County lawsuit. So Lisa Vogler, when that lawsuit came to us, she expressed that she didn't have the capacity to be able to be timely and responsive with that on top of everything else that she was doing for her other clients and the health department. So she negotiated with a colleague of hers from that firm and negotiated the same fee that she and Jim Young charge for the health department, which is a really good fee for us, and connected us with her. Laura Genovich has done a great job representing us in that lawsuit. We actually have the next hearing tomorrow morning. Young Insurance Law is not Jim Young, it is Doug Young. And this was a one-time thing. We did not have coverage from MMRMA related to the lawsuits, the current lawsuits that exist. I received denial letters for those. And the main reason was that they weren't, the lawsuits didn't involve any kind of monetary relief, and they don't cover declaratory kind of judgments. So that made sense, but they also alerted us to a change in the policy, which excludes any kind of lawsuits related to communicable disease issues for public health departments, which is a huge problem. It's not just COVID, it's any kind of communicable disease issues. And so because we were alerted to that through those denial letters, and we really received very, very little notification of that. And the same thing happened to most of the health departments in Michigan. Most health departments have the same insurance company. And so Laura Dinan referred me to Doug Young, who specializes in insurance contracts, and he evaluated the denials and then made contact with the CEO of MMRMA and advocated for local health departments, and including us. And they are working on an endorsement for local health departments that will remove that exclusion. So hopefully in the future, that won't be an issue. So that was a one-time retention with him. Jim Young, of course, is our longtime attorney, advises Lisa Vogler. Lisa Vogler came into working with the health department in Northwest Michigan because of Jim Young. He had kind of selected her as the person to be his successor in public health law in the area. He now lives out of state. He is retired and has been the health department's attorney for a very, very long time, but needs to start stepping away. And so he is really serving in just an advisory role now with Lisa, representing the rest of the services, public health related services, public health code related kind of things for the health department. I wanted to clarify, there was we received a FOIA request, which we will be answering. But there was a question related to the email that I sent you with the amount and then this analysis that Terry did. And what I'll tell you is it's my mistake. When I sent the email, I just included other invoices that had already been paid. And so if I have it here, if anybody wants to look at it, but what I did was the Foster, Swift and Collins, the first 4 invoices were all in one email. And when I looked at it quickly, I thought they were part of the same bills that had been paid that month. So I added those 4 numbers up. And then I also had Jim Young's invoice. I added that in there. And then Lisa, her invoice had been for several months at one time. And so I added that number in there. And that's what came up with that $52,862.50. That didn't make sense. So anyway, we'll be answering the FOIA request, but I wanted you to know that was the story with that. So any questions about that?
I have a question, Lisa, but I think it needs to be directed to Mr. Young and Ms. Vogler. My understanding is that he is part of her firm now. So I'm not sure why we're receiving bills from both him and her in the amount of $57,000 here. So, but I think we will direct those questions to them.
I think that would be appropriate.
Because I wouldn't want you to try and defend their invoices.
Well, and there are some of the charges in here that I really am not involved in. So yeah, I think that's an appropriate.
So on this form, I believe came from Terry Tallis prior to her retirement.
It's been updated. So
Okay.
this is what Terry started and then Amy Decker updated it for me.
So if I understand, okay, thank you. So if I understand it correctly, on the bottom, where it talks about lawsuit related, that is the citizens of Emmett County and the Let Them Breathe lawsuit total for October, November, December,
And January.
and January, which is $42,962.50. Okay. Does the board have any further questions regarding this document? Any further discussion? Okay. Item number 11, Mary Moore. This is again at Commissioner Rubing's request. Ms. Moore was on our agenda last month and was not able to attend. And I believe there's been a few opportunities where she hasn't been able to attend. Ms. Moore, thank you for your attendance. I would remind you that at the beginning of our meeting, we limited these presentations to 10 minutes.
Yes, that's kind of difficult, given that I worked very hard to do a 15-minute presentation, but I will give it my best. I have my own phone here. I'm going to try to time myself and try to stay on track. All right. All right. Thank you so much for allowing me to address all of you today. 15 or 10 minutes is not very long. I've divided my remarks into 2 categories: preliminaries, and I have 4 of those, and then issues that I drew from the February 17th memo, and that's really the guts of my talk. Preliminaries. First, a thank you to Jairus for inviting me to speak here today. I've had the privilege of discussing with Mr. Rubing some of the COVID-19 issues that face our community, and I'm very grateful, Jairus, that you are on the board. Second, I want to acknowledge the stress that was very evident here today that the health department and the health board have all been under since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Within a very short time, once March of 2020 happened, you all found yourselves at the point of the spear locally, trying to combat a declared worldwide pandemic. While I believe myself to be an empathetic person, I probably cannot perfectly imagine the stress, the uncertainty, and the fear that this has entailed. I commend you all for your efforts, your perseverance, and for your courage. I did not come prepared to comment on Lisa Peacock's resignation, but I do have two quick things to say. I did listen to a 90-minute presentation on public health law that was recommended by Lisa Peacock, and the presenter, who's a highly credentialed professor of public health at the University of Michigan, Professor Jacobson, was very emphatic during the presentation that all levels of public health in Michigan face political accountability. He made that very clear. So I want to say I don't think the situation here is personal or vitriolic or sadistic or any of the terrible adjectives that we have heard used here today. I don't think it's a referendum on the quality of the personnel or their skill set or their education or their experience or the help that's rendered to people in need by the health department and all the other normal operations of this health department. My personal opinion is to say this: what we are seeing is a political accountability for what I would gently term inappropriate use of pandemic powers. And I would say this also: it looks to me, and I believe that the professor said something like this: public health is kind of like flying an airplane. 95 to 98% of the time, there's no problem, and you're doing everything that you need to do. But it's that 2% or 5% of the time when there's a test that things get really difficult. And we've definitely seen some turbulence, and I just want you to know that I empathize with it. All right. My third preliminary is just to apologize that I wasn't here last month. I was taking care of my elderly parents, age 89 and 82, who both came down with COVID. By the grace of God, they were not hospitalized, and they are now on the mend. Last but not least, I want to address that question that came up before and that Ms. Peacock raised last month, which is, why am I here to speak to you? The easy answer is that Jairus invited me. That's why I'm here to speak to you. Why did he invite me? I guess that's a bigger question. And I think it's because he wanted to make sure that you all had some access to somebody who is skeptical of the conventional COVID-19 narrative and has the wherewithal and has the knowledge, because I've read quite a bit and I've worked on a legal case, one of the COVID legal cases in the state of Michigan, pro bono for probably the last 18 months. I also do have legal training. I have a JD from Stanford in 1988, and I have an electrical engineering degree undergrad. So those are my basic credentials. I'm a taxpayer in Emmett. I'm a mother. I have 3 boys, age 16, 18, and 22. And I've just, through my training, I'm very interested in COVID. I'm very interested in being able to advise my family, my extended family, and whoever wants to hear me out. And I've developed a lot of knowledge. So last but not least, I can talk to you because I'm not a medical professional. There's been quite a bit of censorship and retribution, if you will, or persecution of, I think, medical personnel who speak out against the conventional COVID narrative. And so I can speak to you frankly, honestly, because I'm not a medical professional. All right. Now, that's it for the preliminaries. Now, what my topic was just, I was going to comment on the February 17th, 2022 memo that did finally unmask our kids at school. And I had 4 takeaways from that memo. And I'm going to start with sort of the legal takeaway that I think people are most interested in hearing about. So make it my first takeaway. So this takeaway has to do with what I would call the epidemic powers of the local health department granted to it under the statute that's titled MCL 333.2453. So what I will say is this. with regard to this memo, I do not see that there has been a repudiation of what I would call these epidemic powers. So while certain masking has been lifted for the moment, the health department has not given up its claim that its officer can continue to exercise very broad emergency powers or very broad powers on an emergency basis with no input from the health board or from anyone else. And as we have seen, that emergency epidemic power has almost no limits. It can hinder or close businesses, hurt our economy, curtail our liberties, dictate our medical care, violate the doctor-patient relationship, and interfere with our kids' education. And not just for days or weeks or months at a stretch, but rather for years. So that observation brings me to the Iron Pig decision in Otsego County. I believe Lisa Peacock said in her memo of February 1 that the Iron Pig has nothing to do with local health departments, but I would argue that that is a misinterpretation. The statute that gives epidemic powers to the local health departments is worded exactly the same way as the state statute regarding MDHHS's powers, the statute that was struck down by the Otsego court in Iron Pig. If Iron Pig is upheld on appeal, then local health departments will lose their epidemic emergency powers along with MDHHS. Yesterday, as the Iron Pig owner explained, the Michigan Supreme Court granted the state legislature the right to file an amicus brief supporting the Iron Pig. I personally think that our experience in Michigan over the past 2 years represents a very strong argument that these epidemic powers are clearly an unconstitutional delegation of power from the legislature, as the Iron Pig ruling held. There is still no end in sight, in my view, either as to the scope of the power that is claimed by the health officials in an epidemic, or as to the length of time that an epidemic emergency can be drawn out with zero oversight, apparently. I strongly disagree with Professor Jacobson on this issue, okay? He was the main presenter of a 90-minute public health law lecture that was recommended by the health department and that I have watched. I would also say this, that if MDHHS and the local health departments had perhaps been a little more circumspect in how they exercise their emergency powers these past 2 years, things like the Iron Pig decision might not have occurred. Okay, I mentioned Professor Jacobson, and I want to say one more thing about his presentation. He interprets the 1905 Supreme Court decision captioned Jacobson v. Massachusetts as a blanket legalization of mandatory vaccination. I disagree. The plaintiff in Jacobson had a choice of paying a $5 fine worth $150 today, or getting vaccinated with a vaccine that had been in use for over 100 years. The result of the court decision was that he had to pay the fine. The court said that situation did not violate the Constitution, and that's all. Today's situation, where people are being forced to take an experimental vaccine or lose their job, is not analogous to what was going on in Jacobson. Moreover, Jacobson preceded the Nuremberg Code and other ethical considerations. All right, I have like 1 or 2 minutes left to cover the rest of what I was going to say. Let me tell you what those topics were, so that if you want to bring me back to talk about them, you're more than welcome to ask. My other 3 takeaways from this memo are: the department is not giving up masking entirely. The department still assumes that masking works to keep people safe from COVID. And I would argue to you and say to you as gently as possible, I don't think that's true. We are decentralized. I learned that from this public health lecture also. We have a decentralized health system in Michigan, public health system. We can make some of our own decisions up here. I don't think the masking should ever come back. And if we ever revisit that issue, I'm glad to talk about it. The other 2 issues were vaccination. And my question would be, why are we spending budget money on vaccination when the risks outweigh the benefits? That's a big discussion. It takes a long time, and we really can't get into it, but that's my view of vaccination, okay? The risks generally outweigh the benefits. And last but not least, early treatment of COVID. There are many ways to treat COVID early that we're not offering here in this health district. And I would urge you all to read this book if you can, Overcoming the COVID Darkness by Drs. Tyson and Fareed. And then I would also urge you, if you care about public health, go and watch Senator Ron Johnson's 4.5-hour panel discussion entitled COVID-19, A Second Opinion. You guys are in positions of authority where I think you really, really, really need to hear the other side. And if you do nothing else, please go and spend 4 hours of your time listening to what all of the censored experts have to say. I think it's really a useful information. Thanks so much. And I'm sorry
Thank
I
you,
went
Ms.
over.
Moore.
Thank you.
Comment on that?
Okay. I'm going to ask that the audience come to order. Commissioner Marcus, you wanted to respond.
Just a quick takeaway, the last sentence in her whole thing was very important, I believe, too. The panel of doctors and specialists that the senator convened was very powerful. And it did last 4 hours, and it was a long 4 hours for me too. So you should listen to it, because these were the doctors and the specialists, including the guy who developed the basis of the vaccine and what he had to say about it. So.
Thank you. Any further comment from the board? Mr. Kuntz?
I'm not sure I have any comments on that. I'm just curious about medical qualifications of the presenter, and we have sort of counter argument to our professional advice, and I'm not really quite sure how that happens. I don't really have much to say about it, other than that's my observation.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Was Ms. Moore rendering a legal opinion or a medical opinion?
I was
Is that
curious
what the
about that
purpose
myself.
Was?
I think Ms. Moore was requested by Commissioner Rubing to present different information than this board has been presented in the past.
She stated that she is not a medical professional, and I just want to acknowledge that here sitting next to me is one of the best and most experienced public health medical professionals in the state. And so, you have Dr. Meyerson at your disposal to answer any questions you need, and the board does have an attorney. And so is Ms. Moore an attorney?
Is
She said she had a JD, that's all I heard.
Mrs. Moore licensed to practice in Michigan?
I don't want to get into
Well, I'd
a
just
lengthy
like to
debate.
know.
I understand. I think she stated she has a JD, but I don't know that she is currently practicing attorney.
I would like you to ask that question of Mrs. Moore. You gave her 10 minutes to speak here. She was rendering what sounded like a legal opinion. I'd like to know if she's an attorney licensed to practice in Michigan, and therefore.
Okay, Mr. McInnes, your point is taken. Mr. Marcus?
I'm trying to take the view it the way they're viewing it, and I'm gonna be honest with you, if this was, I would never accept this type of public speaking and take up 10 minutes in the future. I think we entered a muddy waters, and I gotta look at it from both sides, and I think we could be more cautious in the future when we have someone do a presentation to us. That's all I have to say about it.
Mr. Chair, I'm also curious about the legal qualifications of the presenter. And it seems to me, we do have Dr. Meyerson here, who's an expert, and the internet is available to all of us if we want to do our alternative research.
I do have one comment that was told to relate to the chair by the next speaker.
Okay, before we move on to
Are we going to address the legal qualifications?
item number 12, Ms. Moore, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Moore, are you currently practicing as an attorney in the state?
No, I'm not.
Are you
Thank you.
licensed?
Thank you.
Licensed?
I'm sorry?
Licensed?
She said that she had retired as an attorney.
So she was previously a licensed attorney?
Thank you.
Okay. I would state this to my friends and colleagues. I'm learning as I go here as well. This is my third official meeting as chair of anything. So I will take a much more focused approach to our agenda in the future. Having said that, item number 12, Dixon Dutterer, I believe has forfeited his opportunity for a presentation and left.
I guess.
Mr. Marcus.
He told me to
stated that-
tell you that his intentions were to continue talking till he was forced to stop, to expose the fact that we inappropriately put a presenter in front of us.
Okay. Item number 13. Accounting of Health Department Northwest fund balance, non-spending fund balance, restricted fund balance, committed fund balance, assigned fund balance, and unassigned fund balance. This is a request from Commissioner Pallarito.
I am passing out another document for you. And I-
Thank you. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
We've received a document entitled Policy Procedure Program Administration. It's from the financial section. Fund balance policy dated 6/1 of 2020. It was issued by our former CFO Terry Tallis and concurred by our health officer.
And I'm happy to explain the overview if you'd like me to, or.
Thank you. Go
Yes,
ahead,
please.
Lisa. That page, if you can cut straight to
Yep.
this page, Lisa, I think.
Okay, yep. The fund balance policy explains why we have a fund balance and why it's important. On the back, I would only point out that it talks about the minimum fund balance that the health department has to maintain. And that is a assigned and unassigned fund balance sufficient to provide operating cash flow equal to no less than 2 months of regular operating expenditures based on the prior year budget. So that's the minimum threshold that we're supposed to maintain. And the purpose of the fund balance is explained in here, in that it gives you reserves for emergency situations, unexpected situations. There is the final paragraph that I'll just point out as well. And that is that during 2020, Terry and I approached the board because we, during that time, we had not received a lot of funding for the COVID response early in the pandemic. And we were concerned that we may go below that threshold. And so the board waived that requirement for 2020, fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021. So just know that we did not go below the threshold. We stayed above the threshold, but I wanted you to be aware that there was that waiver just for those 2 years.
All right, thank you.
So then if you look at the balance or the fund balance analysis, and I have asked Andrea Pierce, who is one of our accountants, one of our accounting supervisors, to be on Zoom. If you have questions I can't answer, I'll do my best. But so the non-spendable fund balance, if you go to the bottom of the second part, the second section, the non-spendable is the unassigned fund balance for advances receivable, for fund balance for reclass of vaccine inventory, and for reclass of prepaids. And I can explain those three amounts for you. The 375,000 in receivable is an advance that we provided to Dental Clinics North when the organization was formed and our employees were transitioned from MCDC to Dental Clinics North. That was approved by the board, and it will be paid back by Dental Clinics North once they have established enough of a revenue stream of their own to pay that back. So that will be paid back. We had the same thing with MCDC when that was formed, and it was paid back after about 10 years. The 62,571 of the non-spendable fund balance is the vaccine inventory, that private pay vaccine that we have left on hand at the end of the fiscal year. There's a value to that inventory, and so that is also part of the fund balance. And then the prepaids in the third category are anything that we paid or maybe that was instituted in one fiscal year, but had to be expensed in the next fiscal year. So for example, maybe a maintenance contract for some dental equipment or something like that. that runs from 7/1 through 6/30 of the next year. Some of those expenses are in fiscal year 21, some of those are fiscal year 20, some of them are in fiscal year 21. So the expenses that will be paid later are included in that non-spendable fund balance because we'll be paying them in the future. Does that make sense? Okay.
Lisa, before you go on, if I can ask, okay, I'm not seeing the terminology. I'm seeing the items that you're talking about, the 375, the 62, 571, the 88, 820.
Yeah.
Those are non-spendable. I'm not seeing that terminology on this statement. So I guess if you can help me
Yeah.
understand that better.
Good question. When the auditors come next month, so they are scheduled to come in April, you'll see our audit report, which you guys have seen audit reports before. That part of the fund balance is explained that way as part of our governmental report. And so you can look at this after the meeting if you want to, Scott, but it explains that as non-spendable there. She just didn't use that title in her own analysis.
Okay.
This document is what we prepare for the auditors
Okay.
so that they can prepare this. And this is last year's audit, but I'm happy to show it to you so you can see it match up. Okay, and we do not have any restricted fund balance and we do not have any committed fund balance. And then if you move to the top of the page, you can see our unassigned and assigned fund balance, which is, I think, way simpler to understand. So if you go all the way over to the right side of the page that says 9/30/21 balance, the first number is the unassigned fund balance for the health department. So 2.537247 is the unassigned fund balance for the health department. Remember that dental has a separate fund balance. The next line, the 2.062447 is the dental fund balance. The 62082 is what is left from an assigned fund balance that was approved by the board a number of years ago for facilities and technology improvements. The initial amount was 500,000. Julie and Shirley probably remember that. And we set that money aside to do facility and technology improvements through the years. And there's still 62,000 and some left. Yeah.
Where does that usually typically go after like that? Does it go to a GF or does it go back into that same fund or is it just kind of, what does it go? Where does it go?
Well, it stays in fund balance.
It's just
Yeah.
in its own little fund balance?
Yep. It's
For
a
the same
part-
purpose?
Yes, it's for that.
Okay.
It's an assigned fund balance for the purpose of technology and facility
Got it.
improvements, and it stays there until it's spent.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right.
And so then the total fund balance at the end of fiscal year 21, and this is, prior to the audit, so subject to change if the auditors found anything different, but 4.661776.
And that includes the dental clinic in North.
Correct. And you can see last year where you see, the dental, the expenses over revenue for the health department offset the expenses over revenue for the dental clinics. And so we ended up with a gain overall in that. So anyway, when we have expenses over revenue in dental, it comes out of the dental fund balance. When we have revenue over expenses in dental, it goes into the fund balance, and same for the health department.
Thank you. Mr. Marcus.
In the past, has the minimum sufficient fund balance has it been enough based on the year prior?
Yeah, so for fiscal year 2021, we exceeded the minimum amount per the fiscal year 20 prior year budget, like the policy states, by 523,865.
Lisa, can you direct me to where that is, that the 500,000?
That is a calculation that I asked Andrea to do for me. So it's not here.
So it's
but
not reflected here?
No, it's not. It's my handwriting.
Okay, what was?
2 months of operating expenses are what are the minimum that we need to have. And we exceeded 2 months of operating expenses by $523,865.
523,865.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
One more question.
Mr. Marcus.
What is the typical percentage of operating expense increase each year?
Ooh, I don't know if I know the answer to that question off the top of my head.
Is it is it based on funding, federal funding and state funding too, or?
Oh, you mean what we ask for?
Well, if you have a
Or our
minimum
expenses.
and it's continuing, if you always get an increase and you got a minimum, obviously going to continue to grow. So I'm trying to find out how that 500,000, in addition to, fiscal responsibility, but I'm looking at funding as also and how it pertains to whether we're underfunded and so on. We noticed we just got an increase of funding last year. So I'm wondering if that's been a trend.
And we stayed flat the year before.
And the
All
year
the
before.
counties were flat the year before.
Okay, so last year was
And
the first
Charlotte
time in a
decreased.
while then, eh?
No, I mean, we typically ask for an increase that is loosely tied to cost of living.
Yeah.
Because we know that our expenses will generally go up by that. It's sometimes it typically has been between 1.5 and 3%. Last year we asked for a 3% increase. We received a 3% increase from 3 out of the 4 counties. The year before, we asked for I think a 2.5% increase, but then we withdrew our ask because the counties, one county had decided to reduce our funding by 5%. And because of the partnership between the 3 counties, it just doesn't balance out right. And so we withdrew our request for an increase. We recognized the difficulties that counties were facing that year early in the pandemic, and we all decided together that we would leave it flat.
So the local funding is important outside the federal grant process.
Yeah, the local funding is really important, and it's not even necessarily the amount that makes it as important as the type of funding that it is, and that it's extremely flexible. And we can utilize it. It qualifies for Medicaid match. And so we can utilize it to draw down additional match and provide, services. The reason that we have access to those matching mechanisms is because the cost of providing services billable to Medicaid typically don't cover the costs of providing those services. And so if you can put in some local dollars, you can get an extra, 65% match or a 90% match or a 50% match, depending on the program. And then also just some of the, we deal with some unfunded mandates, unfortunately. And, the non-community water supply program has never been funded at a level that we can operate that program. And so certainly we have to, we have things that we're required to do by law, and we don't have complete funding to do. And so we often use our local dollars to help with that.
This may be an unfair question to you, and I'm glad Terry's here. She might be able to jump in, even though you don't work for us anymore. But did the Health Department in Northwest Michigan receive any of the ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act? No, there were no federal funds.
County and townships. municipalities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And just for those of you that don't remember, that ask was around digitizing environmental health records. So we had met with each county administrator and finance director, talked to the Board of Health, and that's how we ended up submitting a request.
Thank you.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Well, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, Charlie, but occasionally.
As long as you're the
Sharp
heaviest.
Any other questions from the board regarding the fund balances?
Or is that just finance?
I think this is just a point of information. I don't think that there's an action
No,
attached
just
to it.
Point of reference.
Anything else, board, on that topic? Moving on, committee reports. Personnel and Finance Committee accounts payable.
I make a motion that the Finance Committee met and recommends approval of the February bills in the amount of $485,933.39 and the February employee expenses of $18,637.50 be paid.
Support.
Been moved by Commissioner McGinnis, supported by Commissioner Marcus. I don't know why I keep wanting to think Marcus is your first name. I'm sorry. I always feel wrong when I'm doing that, but
We'll be
been
the
supported
first.
by that guy. Any further question?
You were thinking of Marcus Welby, MD.
I did quote Shakespeare. Any further question or discussion from the board? Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Coons,
Yes.
Pallerito,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Program and Evaluation Committee. Commissioner Rubing,
We haven't met since the last time.
we have our next meeting, I believe.
March
on
8th,
On March 8th.
Yep.
At 4:30?
4:30
Is that at the?
at the Health Department.
March 8th. 4:30, and we're continuing the bylaws review and revision. Is that correct?
Yep, and we are looking at the public comment guidelines.
Thank you. Okay, speaking of public comment, we are at that place again. Item number 15 is public comment. Do any members of the public wish to address the board? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mary Martincheck from Emmett County. I have just one comment regarding Mrs. Moore's presentation. For those of you who are not medically educated, I would like to say masks do help, and some of us wear them for reasons other than COVID. I am wearing a mask because I have a family member who had a lung transplant. And I want this mask mandate to come back if necessary in the future. So just a difference of opinion, and masks do work, and I'm glad for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Again, please state your name and address the board.
Brenda Caldwell, KULBIEDA, Emmett County. About masks, I just have to respond because when you do a mask mandate, people want to wear masks, that's fine. We've never said that people shouldn't be able to wear masks. It's when you make people wear masks, we have a problem. Medical professional or not, I'm married to one. I get a lot of information from him. He doesn't pretend to know everything. He's a very smart man. I think all of us could use all the information we can get, which I believe someone like Mary, what is the problem with her offering her opinion? Why the roadblocks? I don't understand that. It's almost as though you don't want to learn anything new. In her letter of resignation, the health officer stated she's resigning from her position because of a hostile work environment. My child has suffered a hostile environment thanks to the Department of Human Services and CDC for the last 2 years. Unlike the health officer, my child has no power. She can't just resign and go elsewhere. I knew from the beginning of this pandemic how this would play out. A lot of us did. We could see it. First the masks, then the vaccines.
Ma'am, again, I would ask that you address the chair.
Okay, first the masks, then the vaccines. While reporting vaccine adverse reactions, the CDC has conveniently left out data in the age groups 18 to 49. Why? What are they hiding? By their own admission, they recently stated they're withholding data for fear it will be, quote, misunderstood, unquote. Yes, this is personal for me. My daughter had COVID, recovered, and it's confirmed that she has the COVID antibodies like a lot of other people. This is an unprecedented attack on my child's medical autonomy. Her choice was taken away. It's frustrating knowing she was already protected due to her COVID antibodies. She was forced to get her third injection today. I worry about her. Will she suffer Guillain-Barré syndrome, blood clot, stroke, myocarditis, menstrual illness, autoimmune disorders, infertility, or worse? All because the CDC decided to ignore hundreds of years of immunological data. Never before has the medical establishment denied the effectiveness of acquired immunity from prior infection. My daughter didn't need these vaccines. The Board of Health must be certain this overreach of power committed by the health department does not happen again. Please be extremely cautious when choosing the next health officer. Choose someone who values the rights of the individual, not the dictatorial state. I want to thank the members of this board who have listened, weathered the storm, and stood up for my parental rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And I spoke to you before, and I do want to address and say thank you. I feel like there are some really good questions that came today, and I appreciate you asking those questions, asking about the Shire, which half the time I don't understand what Jane's doing, but I know she's doing really good work. And it's not my job to know what she's doing. My job is to know my programs. And when Lisa was talking about the Medicaid funding, I run a program that's for moms that are pregnant and their babies that have Medicaid. And the amount Medicaid pays us really doesn't pay for us to drive there half the time. So those local funds that we can then match with other funding is what gets us into those homes, and we're able to do so many more things. So I thank you today for asking those questions. And I just want to reiterate that the people coming to us for those services, I have never, ever, ever once in my life put a vaccine in someone's arm that they didn't ask me to do it first, or gone into their home when they didn't ask me to come and weigh their baby. So I appreciate you listening and learning about our services. And when Lisa said you're more than welcome to come, and talk to her, I want to invite you into our offices. Come in, spend a day and see what we do. It's loud. We have kids in there a lot of the time, so maybe take a Motrin or some earplugs, but I just encourage you to come into one of our offices and spend a couple hours. And we're very open to that. And just learn more about it. And I know some of you know a lot about our services, but if you ever want to know more, I think that's a great way to learn about that. Spend some time in one of our offices. We would more than welcome you there. Thank you.
I didn't get another chance. My name is Tracy Skinner, and I want to finish the remarks that I didn't get a chance to finish earlier. I wanted to say I am a registered voter and I am a mom. I have a child that's in the Pulaski High School school system and had dealt with the mask mandates. And I'm grateful that he was able to go to school and he wasn't isolated. He's fully vaccinated and he's boosted now, and he wasn't sent home and isolated. He didn't miss school. He didn't miss events. He got to participate in the band festivals recently. Like, school is functioning and it's open. And I know that it's an inconvenience and people feel strongly. And I think it's kind of amazing, actually, when you think about the fact that we are here on a Tuesday, how many people feel strongly enough to be here, to share public comment, to risk kind of being in an environment to be laughed at or ridiculed. I think it's amazing that people feel strongly, even if I don't agree necessarily with wherever everybody's coming from. It's normal to have yourself feel this rush of stress in your limbic system and to feel like you're being attacked, but we need to kind of move past that in order to be able to make decisions and move forward. So I'm kind of excited because I've watched all the Board of Health meetings and I felt a little different tone today. And I really do appreciate the shift. Maybe it's just me, but even though I'm very, very sad that we're losing our health officer, and after listening to her, all of these meetings, the depth of her knowledge is staggering, and it's not going to be very easy to replace. I've worked with the health department for close to 30 years in different capacities. And I have been insulated from the upper functionings. I'm in the day-to-day. And it's overwhelming to me to think of the things that she has on her plate, and as do you. So I'm going to put a wish out there for some superhuman wisdom to guide you through the process of moving forward, compassion for others, a commitment to vigorously support this health department and its staff as we continue to serve your communities with the efficiency and excellency that you've come to know. To my coworkers and the leadership at HDNW, I stand with you and I am public health. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further members of the public that want to comment to the Board of Health? Seeing and hearing none, we will close public comment. Commissioners update. I'm going to go right around the list here. Ms. Powers, do you have anything you want to share for the good of the order?
I think it's a very sad day. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Pallarito.
I have nothing, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Marcus.
I'll take my opportunity to advocate against a package of health bills that are aimed to take local control out of the hands of county commissioners across the entire state of Michigan, with a very flawed effort to combine mental health and health service, physical health services together. I ask that you contact your senators and tell them, because the vote is tomorrow, by the way. The Senate Majority Leader is pushing this before he gets out of office, and I normally would support a lot of the actions, but this is detrimental to counties, the funding sources, our ability to manage and keep accountability. Please contact your senators and tell them and educate yourself on the package of bills that's being voted on tomorrow.
That's that privatization issue, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's not just that. It's government control. We no longer are appointed our boards. We are no longer going to be accountable to our health community, mental health boards, our funding streams. They're going to be in the hands of private businesses who will basically claim they're going to expand services, but these package of bills do not fix a single thing that we're struggling with today. We needed more beds for people who need services. They said they didn't have money. The supplemental bills that came out last week added $520 million to it. Suddenly they found $520 million they could add to it that we could have used for those beds that we needed. So like in government, people need to understand that bills get passed, supplementals, to try to vote, to force your vote. And it goes on both sides of the parties. If you're not going to get your vote, well, I'll give you this, I'll give you that, I'll give you this much more money, and maybe you'll give me the vote. And I hate that about politics, but this is, in this particular case, we need more community action, not just signs, make phone calls, tell people that this, you can't vote for this. It's not a good thing. And I'm usually about competitiveness, the ability to compete in health for insurance and such. But in this particular case, there's all kinds of problems that the counties are going to face. The Headley violations, it's going to open all kinds of problems for us that we're going to have to fight at a whole different level. So.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Mr. Rubin.
I would just like to say that I am thankful to Lisa for lifting the mask mandate. I am very appreciative of that. And I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. So I want that to be publicly on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Coons.
Thank you. So this is a sad time for the residents of Northwest Michigan. We're losing the services of a dedicated and highly competent public servant who served with distinction as a health director for several years. The conditions under which she's leaving are especially disturbing, given that she cites conduct of Board of Health members as primary reason. To quote from her letter of resignation, "The disconnect between this longstanding culture of the health department and the current Board of Health is striking and damaging. It's literally impossible for me to continue to support our team in this way in the face of ongoing efforts by the Board of Health to damage this strong health department and me as its leader." As a public school teacher, this is personal to me. I've been walking through COVID almost daily since September of 2020. Thanks to policies and protocols that were put in place by the health department in coordination with my school district, I've managed to avoid contracting COVID the whole time. Our district has been able to remain open with in-person learning for almost all that time. And thanks to the health department, Emmett County has achieved one of the highest vaccination rates in the state. Ms. Peacock has been a model of courage, committed to service in the face of unwarranted hostility, and a model of integrity as she now refuses to compromise her professional standards, preferring to resign rather than to acquiesce to destructive and unreasonable demands. Ms. Peacock will always have my respect and gratitude. Frankly, I'm ashamed to be part of what's taken place here on this board during the last several months. The disruptions to the health department and the losses in personnel will take years to overcome. I challenge all Board of Health members to do better moving forward. Work to support the health department and the services that they provide to the best of your abilities. Listen to staff, respond to their needs, and promote healing and rebuild trust. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McKinnis.
I have nothing to add. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Roloff.
I think I've said enough, but I do want to say again to Lisa, you're truly going to be missed.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add. I will take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. McGinnis.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Pallarito. We are adjourned.